Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to my Final Fantasy VII review, my Final Fantasy VII Remake review. This is a special review though, because it's not just my own opinion. I've got two guests with me, two longtime friends of the channel, you could say, because I've had them on before, and they also want to share their opinion about Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm talking, of course, about VFXMario and Shinuchi. VFXMario, how's it going with you? Can you tell us a little bit about your background with the original Final Fantasy VII going into this discussion, and maybe something about where people can find you if they want to hang out and chat and talk about video games?
Yeah, no problem. So, I think the last time we were here, it was the Games of the Year for 2019, I want to say, because I think we didn't do one for this year.
Yeah, 2018 discussion.
Yeah.
We're recording
2018
2018.
was completely skipped.
But yeah, no, it's always a pleasure. But I finished the remake about 3 to 4 days ago, so it's still pretty fresh on my mind. But for me, it's a little weird for my background with the series. I kind of call myself like a casual Final Fantasy VII fan, because a long story short, I tried playing it back in like mid 2000s. I remember that because that was when I was kind of discovering the Final Fantasy series. Thanks to like Virtual Console, like playing the old school Super Nintendo ones and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I want to check out 7, and I tried 2 on the PS3 version, and I'm not sure if something else got in the way or something else distracted me at the time, or maybe I just couldn't get into it as much as I wanted to. But I could not finish a full playthrough. I know I did about 15 hours, but I couldn't even tell you like what was like the last location I was on. It's just it's been over a decade since that. Oh my god. But I never got to finish it. I want to correct that at some point. Now that I finished the remake, I definitely want to go and play the original, which we'll get into reasons why later. But it's weird. I did end up seeing a playthrough afterwards when I stopped playing the game, but I still wanted to know what happened in those years. So I do know most of the plot points. I wasn't going into this completely blind, but at the same time, it doesn't compare to playing the whole game for yourself, obviously. So I definitely forgot some things along the way. But thankfully, all you really need to know for this remake is, for the most part, the Midgar section, which is like really early into the game. It takes about 5 to 8 hours, somewhere around there. So it was interesting for me to go in because I kind of wanted to see what this was going to do and if I could get immersed as much as I wanted to, because it really was like a little tough to get immersed when it's a little dated, but the game still has its own charm. Like I remember my sister recently when she saw comparisons to this in the remake, she said that it was almost like characters doing like an elaborate like Lego set of the story, right? The models got like this weird primitive charm to them. But yeah, I never properly played it, but I was looking forward to this either way, because I'm just a JRPG fan in general. But that's pretty much it for me. Oh, and if people wanted to know where they could find me, usually on my Twitch is probably the best bet at VFXMario, but I also have a Twitter by the same name, and that's mainly the two places. I do also have a YouTube channel with the same name. I like to keep it consistent, but it's mainly a stream archive channel, so if for some reason you watch this like 1 or 2 months afterwards and they're not on past broadcasts on Twitch anymore, you'll find the full playthrough of my first reactions and all the hype and everything on that channel for sure, because I really want to preserve that stuff. First playthroughs are really important, so yeah, it'll be there if anybody's curious. But aside from that, take it away, Shin.
Pretty much my background, with Final Fantasy VII. Basically, I've told Zigoten before, I have 110% of the game myself, the original. Nice. It took a whole summer for myself to finish everything in Final Fantasy VII. Literally, I had 99 of every single item and 100% of every single materia, gone through every single Easter egg. It was probably the biggest project I've had for an RPG. And with the remake, I tried to forget as much as I could about the original because I got burnt out so hard from the original that I was like, I'm just glad the remake is coming. But
Nice.
Anyway, it's cool to have this remake and, coming from, a background that has played the game multiple times, It's freaking
Mhm.
cool. But yeah, if you want to know about my Twitch here, it should be twitch.tv/Shinuchi. And usually stream just Monster Hunter and a lot of variety of games. So yeah.
Great. So yeah, quickly about myself. You obviously know where you can find me because you've already found me if you're watching this, I guess. But about Final Fantasy VII, the original, I played through it once. Just the story though, I didn't 110% it like you, Shin. And that was about 14, 15 years ago. And I also remember being stuck on the final boss for literally a year or something. I tried it out periodically to beat him. Like every once in a while, and I would fail and stop playing the game again for another month and then try again. That was back when I was 14, 15 years old. And until I finally did beat the boss, and that was my only playthrough. So, and because it was such a long time ago, I honestly don't remember much of the details about the story. I remember the general gist of what happened. But yeah, I'm a bit iffy as far as the details go. And yeah, that's my own background with the original Final Fantasy VII. But before we get into the discussion proper here, we have an agenda, of course. Maybe I'll show some of it here on the video, by the way. I want to talk quickly about your guys' expectations and whether they were met or not by this remake. Without giving too much away, without going into specifics too much, because we do have specific categories we want to talk about afterwards. But yeah, what were your expectations? Were you super hyped going in, and were those expectations met or not? Let's start with Marcos, I guess.
Okay. So for me, I was definitely hyped for this. I would say this game and Doom Eternal were my two most anticipated games all year. I know Xenoblade Chronicles is coming out later. I know it's like unrelated, but that's mainly like, a fresh coat of paint. It's like a really good remaster. But in terms of like new experiences, those two for sure. And for me, like I said, as someone who didn't get to properly finish the whole game, and I do still appreciate all the story and like what it is, no doubt. But I kind of was looking forward to just have the one that I could call my own, that I could properly say like, yes, I can experience this along with everyone else. I can have this feeling that people did in the 90s. Not exactly the same, but I want to be a part of that. Final Fantasy's always been really weird for me, where I've always appreciated a lot of games from afar. I've played a few. I'm not going to list all of them because we'd be here, longer than we have to. But I've played a few. And the other ones, especially the modern ones, I'll be real with Square Enix, there's always this weird disconnect for me, where I can't get as immersed into the world and the characters as I want to, because it's riddled with all this like weird, like, I don't even know how to explain it, just like a lot of these like complicated like terms and like technobabble and all this stuff that just doesn't seem grounded to me, like not as grounded as I would like 13 being a pretty good example, where it's like it's a little weird. I can follow it, but it's not exactly making it feel real to me. And I will say one thing too, get your pitchforks out. I've mentioned it on stream. I enjoyed 15 because I actually liked the banter between the characters. That felt very grounded. That felt very personal to me, and I felt like I could, get invested in those characters a lot more. I know the storytelling, and there's a whole bunch of problems with that game, but I enjoyed it for what it was because I could get, sucked into these characters. And for me, that's like paramount. If you have good characters, I'll enjoy anything. So yeah, with Remake, I had a little bit of hope, but I did fear that, modern Square Enix, like Final Fantasy issues might get in the way for me. And I have to say, without, going into it, they pretty much exceeded all of my expectations. It is one of my favorite games that I've played all year, and I'm just glad I can finally enjoy Final Fantasy again, because it feels like I haven't been able to like be a part of this for years, and this one's just great. I really loved it, but of course we'll get into that later. But Shin, you take it away from here.
Well, honestly, my expectations just completely went wild with this with this game already, with how much Final Fantasy games we had before. Coming from 13, and then we got 15, but everything from my expectations, everything was just a culmination, and just the remake itself from all the other games, and I did not expect, the remake to be this good.
God.
Seriously. But yeah, just to keep it concise. But yeah, if you want to move on, go ahead.
Okay, so interesting. So we all had somewhat positive expectations, and it seems like they were at least met, I would say, in summary. Marcus, you brought up an interesting point. I think you said current Square Enix issues.
Yeah.
And which kind of hampered your expectations a little bit. That's something I want to get into more towards the end of the discussion as well. Talking about the end of the discussion, we're going to have a spoiler section that's going to start somewhere later. There's probably going to be a timestamp in the description and probably in the video itself. Timestamp regarding when the spoiler discussion starts and when it ends again. And that's probably when we'll talk about our final verdict. But let's get started here with our first category that we want to talk about here, which is the visual and audio presentation. What do you guys think? How does the game compare to its contemporaries on that front? Is it a pretty sounding game?
Mind if I start?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll let you have it this time.
Yeah, go ahead, Shin.
Visually, at least graphically speaking, I believe it's on Unreal Engine 4.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, the amount of time and effort they put into every single detail within the environments is crazy. Even though some of the textures, didn't load properly at times, I feel like, that could be the hard drive issue on the PS4, and I felt like an SSD might fix the issue. A lot of the textures look pretty fine, even though some of them were limited because of the hardware. But the lighting, the ambient occlusion that I've seen, the amount of polish and anti-aliasing, the anti-aliasing solution that I've seen in FF7 Remake, I was like, how did they pull that off to make everything look so smooth?
Yeah, it's so good.
Like, I look at Cloud's hair, I look at everybody's hair, I look at all the details between their clothing and everything. It's like, I don't see much of anything, that ugly. Like, how much time did they take just to make Cloud's model and everybody else's model? Like, I actually wonder.
How much time did they spend on Cloud's hair? I wonder.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I can only imagine.
And I was like, wow, I've never seen any other game like this. Like, compared to like 15 was like open world and all that, and it was beautiful. But when I just look at Remake, I'm like, wow, they really learned from their lessons. Or whoever they hired, they got somebody really good on board.
Yeah, you mentioned the lack of aliasing or the strength of the anti-aliasing, or how whatever means they use to reduce the jagged edges, and I pointed that out in my demo impressions, just how clean the game looks.
Yeah.
And how smooth it runs for how clean it looks, even on a regular PlayStation. There was one instance towards the end of the game where the frame rate kind of buckled a little bit for me, but that might have been overheating issues, honestly, because at that point I had been playing the game for probably 10 hours or something. So maybe that was actually my PS4, or maybe because it was just one specific scene that I remember that had issues like that. But for the most part, it ran rock solid. But yeah, what do you think, Marcus, about the visuals?
Well, first I was gonna ask, just to make sure, I think you were playing on like base PS4, right?
I was, yeah.
Okay. I doubt it changed performance too much, but I was playing on Pro. I think Shin, you have a PS4 Pro as well, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. But no, it's just to say, for anybody that hasn't played yet, don't worry about whether you get on Pro or not. It's negligible. The game still looks great on PS4 from what I've seen, like the base model. But in terms of visual and audio, oh my lord, it's incredible. Like yes, it has some issues, but I could not stop gushing. Every new location, every place we went to, the two things that really, at least for me, that I appreciate the most, since this is visual and audio, the voice acting is fantastic. It's some of the best voice acting I've seen in a Square Enix game in years. Like a lot of recognizable talent, but also just so much NPC banter, so much dialogue that you could just walk past or just stay there and appreciate. It's insane. And not even just one, like they will change based off what's going on in the story, and it's just so much attention to detail that makes this world feel absolutely lived in that I couldn't get enough of it. It's it's something else. And the other thing too that makes it look better compared to 15 and the other games is, and I mentioned this several times that I was streaming, the lighting needs like an Academy Award or something, like Max said, or like a medal. I said on stream, it's like it's insane how much detail there is in the lighting. Like even just with like cars, and like there's like imagine just like a puddle or something on the ground, and the backlights of the car just like have this amazing effect, like on the lighting on the surface of the floors and everything. Like the entire game has this polish of lighting that I haven't seen in a long time. Like it's insane detail, and that seems like such a minor thing, but when you play the game, heck, even if you don't have the game yet and you just want to check it out with like the bombing mission like demo or something, it's immediately apparent how much lighting is a huge deal for the tone and the mood, for like the settings of each section of this game. They really mess with it. Like there's genuine like mood lighting to this stuff. It's incredible. But yeah, the game looks great aside from a few rough spots, but it never detracted from me enjoying the game in any way. It's great.
Do you know what that effect is called when the game sort of simulates your light darkness adjustment when you leave dark areas and enter bright areas? That effect was crazy.
Wouldn't it just be bloom lighting? I want to say
maybe. I'm not sure.
Kind of like you change the environmental lighting as you go through like an entrance.
Yeah.
But definitely one part when like Cloud leaves, I guess not really spoilers, but like when he leaves a building, like at the early part of the game, and you just like walk outside, and it's like, yeah, it really feels like you're just walking out into a bright light. It's fantastic. Oh my god.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, did you want to say something? Add something, Shin?
We're talking about sound. What about the soundtrack?
Soundtrack's 10 out of 10. Please put it on Spotify. I'm
make
begging
it 15
you,
out of 10. The amount of tracks are tremendously large. Like the amount of dynamic tracks I've heard throughout the whole game itself, I was like, this is like an audiophile, audiophile heaven to me.
Yeah, it's, oh my goodness. It's like I said it before on Twitter as well and on stream. This is probably my favorite soundtrack in all of Final Fantasy, which I know the other ones are great, don't get me wrong, but the consistency and it's checking off every right note for me. I adore this soundtrack. Like I was playing this with my sister as well, for context for anybody. She loved it too. Like we were just waiting for like a track to be like lesser than what I was expecting, and every single time they just killed it. Oh my god, every time.
Yeah, I also want to mention a couple of things about the soundtrack. One quick note on the visuals. I think we kind of alluded to it. I think if you really wanted to, you could look for some of the details that don't look right. For example, given the kind of nature that Aerith is as a character, you see a couple of close-ups of flowers and stuff like that, and you see some low texture resolutions there. But aside from that, if you just look into the distance and look at the sheer amount of detail and at what's happening on screen, it's kind of crazy how good the fidelity is. But yeah, regarding the audio, this is, of course, I don't know what the ratio is between original songs to just rearranged or remastered songs. I want to say there are, first of all, the soundtrack is great, obviously. There's like one or two songs in there that I'm personally not a fan of, just because the game covers a lot of different styles of music. And so you might not like every single theme that there is in there. And there is one theme, I think it plays in the Collapsed Expressway that kind of borders on dubstep a little sometimes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and
that one's a hit or miss, but
yeah, for me personally, I don't like it from a personal perspective, but I can't fault it for being in the game because it still fits the scene really well, and it still fits very well and does its job well. It's just
I still like that, but definitely they go into like some techno areas that be like it might not sound like what Final Fantasy soundtracks are expected to be. I will say one last thing before we go on to the next segment really quick. Is just I can't go into spoilers or examples specifically, but I don't know if it happened with you guys, but at least for me, there were certain sections, like just a few sections, where the music to voice acting, like mixing and balance, was a bit off. Sometimes performances were drowned out by the music in certain like cutscenes or moments, and I don't know if that's just because of like my soundbar or what have you. But even when I watched Max's playthrough, like after I get to a point, just for the heck of it, the mixing did not sound great over there either when I was listening to it. It's very slight. It maybe happens like twice in the entire game or 3 times, but it was noticeable for me where I was like, it's a little hard to hear what they're saying sometimes. But it wasn't bad. It's just something I noticed.
Yeah, I think it's not just you. I heard, and I saw people talk about that specific issue. I don't remember if it was the case too much on my own playthrough. It probably was. It didn't bother me all that much because you do have subtitles and everything, and I probably didn't pay too much attention to it, honestly. But I want to take maybe half a minute here or something. I want to take this opportunity because I rarely get this chance. But can we talk just a little bit about the original FF7's soundtrack that is being used as like the basis for this new remastered soundtrack? Because if this is your first Final Fantasy that you're playing, you might not know this, but Final Fantasy has some of the best music in all of gaming. And Final Fantasy 1 through 10, those soundtracks were all developed by Uematsu as the main composer, who has done some incredible work, literally done hundreds of 10 out of 10 songs. He wrote like 160 pieces for Final Fantasy 9 alone, which I'm currently doing another playthrough of. So I would highly suggest, if you like the music in this game, go back and check out the music of some older Final Fantasies. There's even a really good documentary that's like 20-25 minutes back from 2004, done by a TV program from the US, I believe, called G4, which is kind of hit and miss, people say, but that specific documentary was really well done. And if you're interested in more music along those lines, I highly recommend either listening to some of the older tracks or going back and playing through some older Final Fantasy games and listen to the songs in their intended environment. It's really fantastic. But yeah, this remake soundtrack, the remastering, I think the brunt of it was done by Masashi Hamauzu, who did the Final Fantasy 13 soundtrack. He did a fantastic job, and whoever assisted him also fantastic.
Didn't he also work on 10, I believe?
He did work on 10 together with Uematsu, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but no, it's great. The original, like, and this one, they really do him justice.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go into the gameplay. Let's talk specifically about the battle system first, because I remember the battle system was like the first point, when they started talking about this remake, where I was a little bit bummed out because I would have loved to see turn-based combat make a return here, but they instead went for a more action-oriented approach, which I think in the end worked out really well. But Shin, what do you think about the battle system in Final Fantasy VII Remake specifically?
Oh, a lot. More so that it's just a couple of like Final Fantasies. It's pretty much a culmination of almost all the Final Fantasies put together.
Yeah,
specifically for me, it's like 13 and 15 system put together, because the ATV system kind of started like more so in in 13, which was interesting. Kind of like they just, with these little ATB bars that you just do magic and all that, they just transfer it over into 7 Remake, and then you got 15's movement. The way it works in 7 Remake is like you got your active action system going on. And it's interesting to see, 13 and 15's combat put together in Remake. It's almost like the games before were just tech demos of gameplay before we got, the
Pretty
actual
much.
gameplay. I'm like, what is this?
Oh man.
It's like, it works fluidly. It doesn't feel awkward. But
Yeah, I think it was a big step up after 15, definitely. Feels so much better to play.
And especially trying to integrate the materia system from the old game into that, those two gameplay systems as well, and trying to make it smooth and actually balanced. I'm like, wow, good job.
Man.
Even with limit breaks too. So,
Yeah,
just kudos to Square Enix there, honestly. Like
Absolutely.
gameplay wise, they definitely nailed it. Doesn't feel boring at all to play.
Marcus, do you want to say something specifically about the battle system?
Yeah. So for me, I immediately got hyped with this when they mentioned that the battle planner, or the one who designed the combat for Kingdom Hearts 2, was working on this. I was like, absolute confidence. Kingdom Hearts 2 is like one of my favorite games of all time, for many reasons. But that combat system never gets old for me. So seeing that he was at the helm for this, I was curious to see how they would do it. And the second I saw, I believe at E3, they showed off the other Scorpion fight for the first time as like a demonstration. And I saw all these subtle things, like, of course, I mentioned the ATB system and everything. But in the Scorpion fight, light spoilers, this is like at the very beginning of the game. But even just little things that happen in the boss fights, where like there's like debris falling and it's about to shoot out its tail laser, like just like from the original game. But now a really cool thing is that you can switch party members, and the attack won't autocorrect to your, to the one that you're controlling. It'll focus on the one, like if it's a laser beam like that, you can just switch party members and capitalize on that moment and get in a little bit of damage in. And it's just this little subtle nuance that I just really appreciate, because I'm not used to that in games. I'm used to, like, if you switch party members, it's just for their utility and nothing else. But I love how there's a bit of strategy to that. You got to consider your environment as well. Attacks don't automatically hurt you. If you're behind a wall or something, they will miss. There are some attacks that are guaranteed to hit. Some, it's better for you to dodge or block. There's just a lot of nuance to this stuff. There's like so many more layers that I keep finding the more I kept playing through the game, and it's so satisfying to figure that stuff out, along with like enemy weaknesses, the unique abilities each party member has. It just really comes together. But the one thing that my sister and I both agreed is the best part about the system is the command menu. Like, it is like the great equalizer in between all this hectic madness, is being able to pause, or like, slow down time, carefully choose what you want to do with your ATB, and give yourself just a moment to breathe and just, process what you're going to do and plan forward, or give commands to other party members. It's great. It's this wonderful hybrid of like action-based gameplay, but also just, carefully choosing what you got to do for tactical commands. It's a really well done system. I can't wait to see what they do with it in the future. And the only other part that I will say that's like a bit of it took me a minute to get used to until like the end of the game, was that enemies, if you control a party member, enemies deliberately go and attack you. I noticed like halfway through.
Yep.
And at first I thought, well, that's a little annoying when I just want to stick to one character. But towards the end, I kind of started to see it as guaranteed aggro, for better or for worse. And you can kind of use that to guarantee that, other skills that your party members can do don't get sniped or interrupted, like heals and whatnot. So I really started taking advantage of that towards the end, which was great. So I can't wait to mess with that if I ever play the game again in the future. But there's just a lot of things to improve on, and you always feel like there's something you can learn from the system. Like, it gives you back, as much as you learn from it. It's very satisfying.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely. I wish it'd give you more shortcuts, honestly.
That is the one thing, yeah. I wish, like Kingdom Hearts 3, like, they give you, like, several shortcut menus. Yeah, I would like a few more shortcuts.
Yeah, I personally use the menu more so than the shortcuts. I use the shortcuts mainly for like Tifa's special ability, where she powers up
Yeah.
and a couple of other things, but I mainly used the menu. Shin, did you want to add something to that?
No, other than shortcuts, I do like the fact that you can just switch between modes, difficulty modes, where it's like, oh, you could just let your characters do whatever they want. You just use the menus only.
Yeah.
I like that, for people who just like to do turn-based combat. But, for me, of course, I do love the fact that I can have shortcuts and just, activate commands on the fly.
Yeah.
Like Devil May Cry gameplay. I really love that.
Yep.
This is the fact that I love countering, with Cloud. A lot.
Man, I'm surprised. Like, that is the one thing I will say that's kind of had the battle system. I wish they made it more clear that the Punisher stance, like counter, is the thing that you should do more often. Because I've seen a lot of people that I follow on Twitter not know or forget, because it's just one little like tutorial blurb and that's it that they remind you on. But yeah, the Punisher stance counter. Oh my God! If I could drill something into anybody's head, use that. Oh my God, it's
I love the
it's
learning
really good.
curve. At least the learning curve that it's not just the menu system that you really have to master, but you also still have to master your dodging, your countering, your attacking, your positioning still.
Yeah,
I love that.
Dude, there were some parts that I mentioned on stream that remind me straight up of because I know it combines like 13 all these other games, but for me, it definitely had shades of Kingdom Hearts as well in a good way. Like some attacks just have these really nice tells. And sometimes even before I learn what to do for like dodging or blocking, there are moments where I just knew exactly what to do and it just worked out in my favor. And I was just like, oh my God, this feels so satisfying to pull off. And enemies also have like a stagger state, but they also have a point where you can't just keep wailing on them. They will like hit you back, similar to how you do combos in the Kingdom Hearts series, where it's like at some point, nothing's guaranteed, but it's satisfying to learn the openings and what you have to do. I love it.
Yeah, two things I want to touch on still. So first of all, the Marcos, I think you mentioned it, that the enemy AI always likes to aggro the character you're currently controlling, and I'm not sure if the game actually tells you this at any point, but I also kind of just figured it out halfway through the game, and I was unsure what to think about that, because it kind of felt like cheating almost. Oh, the AI knows which character I'm controlling, but honestly, I think once everything's said and done, I think I really like the system, because that kind of almost made the game feel like a turn-based game, even though it's action-based, you know what I mean? Because like, let's say you're currently controlling Barrett, you get your couple of moves out, and then before you take too much damage, you switch to another character. So it's almost like, okay, now it's your turn. Now I do the moves with you. Okay, enemy AI is on me. Okay, now I switch to this character. And so it almost adds this turn-based nature to the game, which is already in there as well with the menu and the ATB system. But then this is another layer of it. And so I think it's a fantastic blend of like action and turn-based in a way that really, came to fruition pretty well in this game. And one thing also about the stagger, I recently played through the 13 trilogy, I mean specifically 13.2 and 13.3. I think 13 was the first Final Fantasy that introduced stagger, but what specifically annoyed me about Lightning Returns, the third game in that particular trilogy, is that it also has stagger, but in that game you were basically forced to attack the enemy relentlessly in order to stagger it. If you didn't attack it for like 2 or 3 seconds, the stagger would start to fall down again and you would have to rebuild it up. And I like the fact that you can take your time with the stagger and really plan ahead and take a breather every once in a while to heal up if you need to, but still constantly work on, getting that stagger gauge up. That was, because it felt so hectic when I played through Lightning Returns. But it feels so well in this game. It feels so good.
Oh man, sorry, that was one thing I forgot to mention too, was that along with that stagger system, I love how different characters, like their own combat abilities, they all have different effects that make sure that they never go out of style. Because I'm thinking of like times where it's like they're so close to getting staggered, so I use Cloud's like focus stress to just get in like a bit more to fill that meter faster, right? And it's just so much utility to the point where I was using older skills that I thought would go out of style and like not be used. right up until the end of the game. Like they always have a use, and it's just you can tell they considered every little thing in this game. There's nothing that feels like it's not a good option to use, but you just have to consider it in the moment. It's just so well done. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't get moves that are just straight up better versions of moves. You basically just, your options are just being expanded upon, I guess, is the best way to put it. There is something like, for example, Cloud has a move called Braver, which doesn't have any special effect. It does a lot of damage.
Yep.
And then later on in the game, he gets another move that does even more damage, but it's kind of balanced in the sense that the other move that does even more damage requires 2 ATB gauges as opposed to just one, and it also has a longer animation, so you need to be careful when exactly you use it. So it's really well balanced, and it is a stronger version of that move, but not a straight up better version, so to speak.
Yeah.
And pretty much the balance. There's also a balance of like there's moves that increase stagger more, and there's also moves that do more damage when the enemy's staggered, which is nice bit of variety.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we're all in love with the battle system, which is, at least to me, it's surprising because I was kind of skeptical going into this, especially coming after 15, where I thought the combat was just kind of okay.
Yeah, it was very automatic.
Yeah, it really worked out well here. But let's go into the next chapter of our discussion here and talk about some of the other gameplay systems. Shin kinda alluded to the materia system earlier, so I guess we can talk about this here and maybe, I don't know, some of the puzzles or whatever other gameplay systems you can think of. So, but yeah, I think let's start with the materia system, Marcus. What did you think of how they implemented it here?
I was surprised to see it be relatively faithful to what the original was, because I didn't know what to expect. Like, I knew materia was going to be in there, but I wasn't sure if they were going to bother with like blue materia that links with the other ones or what have you. But they did a surprisingly great job with it. Including what I was really looking forward to, because I wasn't sure if they were going to follow through on that at all, was like new unique materia that would work specifically for combat that would not make sense in the original game. Like the best like early example would be the deadly dodge materia, where essentially you can do a counterattack or like an attack animation after you dodge, which is really great on certain characters that really need it when they want to like keep their distance. And it's just really cool to see them like add in some new ones and also have ones that you kind of know what the best use is because you played the original game and like you know what to equip it to immediately. But just like the original, the best thing about the materia for me is that you don't have to and this is all like praise that could be put on the original as well, but I'm just glad they kept it this way as well, is that you don't have to keep spamming the ability to master it. You just have to have it equipped. That's one of my favorite things. Like there are some abilities where it's like, oh, I'll get into a fight and like they're immune to this like ailment or something, so it's like I probably can't use this, but I'll put it on anyway, just so that it gets mastered. And I really like that, you can just swap it out for anybody. So if there's one really maxed out, like, healing materia, I could just put that on someone else for the time being, and it works just as well. It's just great. I'm glad they kept it just the way it was from before.
Yeah, there's a lot of quality of life with the materia. For example, the fact that there's this enemy skill materia, but the skills you learn from enemies with that materia are actually bound to the materia and not to the character who's using the materia, which would be more logical, I guess, but it would also be a lot more cumbersome.
Yeah.
And so they really thought about that. But Shin, what do you think about the materia system?
I really, really wish I had more magnified materia. That's one thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
Man, throughout the playthrough, it's like only one character can have it, and I wish I would put it more to like put, more healing spells. But other than that, a lot of the system is very well done, especially with, the enemy skill materia. They put in a lot of thought to make sure every materia is balanced. As well as, the new gameplay system that they have about weapons, adding materia slots too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Adding materia slots, adding attack, magic attack, adding certain, buffs for certain skills for the weapons, as well as weapon proficiencies. I'm like, wow. I did not expect that coming from the original.
Oh man.
So
Yeah,
making every weapon viable, especially with just putting any material you probably want into every weapon you want, and every weapon can just be used. You could just use the first weapon you want throughout the whole playthrough, and you don't have to care about the others per se. But the beauty is that, just leveling up the proficiencies for every weapon is beneficial in itself. To have every single skill transferred over, I was surprised by that.
Yeah, it's such a good incentive to just master that stuff. And then the other good part too, really quick, was just that in order to get like SP, I believe, skill points for each weapon, you don't even need to use them, right? Like you could just pick whatever you want for the moment, max out that weapon's proficiency. But every other weapon that's not in use will get the same amount of SP because it's strictly based on your levels. And that's great. That's also what makes them viable, because if you didn't use like the Buster Sword for forever and it didn't get the SP, then like it's too late to fix it, right? It's gonna take forever. You'd never do it. At least I wouldn't. So I'm glad they made that even more, convenient in that sense.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I agree, and I really like the layout of, I guess, your skill point system, like where you actually spend the skill points, because again, if you compare this to like 13, which actually had a similar looking system, at least as far as the visual representation goes, you look at, it was basically a 3D version of the sphere grid from Final Fantasy X, and at first glance it's like, whoa, I can make all these choices, but then you realize, well, I'm basically skilling my way through this linear line where I don't really have any choice. Occasionally I can choose to invest into a skill that's to the left of the path before I keep going forward, but it's essentially just a straight line. Yeah. Whereas here in this game, it's like I can make all these choices. I don't have to, take any set path that's already laid out in front of me. I can choose between these 5 different skills. I can choose between these 5 different skills, between these 5 different skills. There's a lot of freedom in there. And overall, I personally, for the most part, just went with the skills that would increase my stats, because that's what I typically do in games. But there's also conditional stuff in there. For example, if you have more than 90% HP, then you have higher magic or something like that. Or when you cast something while you're at full MP, it's stronger. So there's probably a bunch of niche little things you can do with that.
Yeah, I definitely went with I was just gonna say, I definitely went with like the new materials, if I did find any like new slots. But then after that, pretty much going for stats.
Oh yeah, the materia slots, yeah, that's true. Those were really valuable. Speaking of materia, I'm not sure if we want to talk about anything else as far as these other gameplay systems go, aside from the battle system, but I just, out of curiosity, has any one of you used the Shinuchi materia much? Because I found that one a bit confusing as to how it actually works.
I think the way it works is that if you have like an ally or whoever you're not controlling equipped with that, I think if the player that you control does use something, they will, like, so like I guess like an example, like if, I don't know, Barrett has like fire and Cloud has like synergy with like thunder, I think the way it works is that if Barrett uses like a magic spell, Cloud will always follow up with like a thunder spell. But
yeah, I thought that's how it works, but I'm not sure if it actually worked like that, or if I just didn't notice.
I tested it myself actually, but
yeah,
basically, like whenever you pair it with some kind of materia that's like thunder, you got fire, ice, lightning, wind, and poison, I believe.
Yeah.
That character will always follow up with what you use. So it's not like they'll just go by the weakness of the monster you're going against per se, but they'll follow up with whatever it's paired with that materia. Yeah. So it's like, for example, Cloud uses thunder, but Aerith has fire. Then Aerith will follow with fire after Cloud uses thunder. But if you use Aerith instead of Cloud, Cloud will not follow up. It's only the character that has the synergy materia that'll do it.
So it's essentially like an auto magic cast, essentially.
Yeah, kind of like auto Kira, but you just have an auto magic cast, yeah.
And does it trigger on any elemental spell you use?
It triggers on whatever elemental, Whatever
Okay.
elemental spell you usually use, yes.
Yeah, I was kind of unsure if I should give it to the character who I wanted to use or the character that I'm using. I was kind of confused.
It's kind of like this, where you just use it on monsters that are weak towards a certain element, and you just want both characters to use a magic spell at the same time, so just to build up the stagger bar really fast, or just do a lot of damage in one go. It's just burst damage. So yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. That one particular materia was a bit confusing to me, but other than that, I really like the materia system, and I'm actually kind of curious what they're gonna do with all our skill points and all our materia with the second part. If they're gonna keep all that, if we're gonna be able to integrate our saves in any way, because I feel like we already have too many materia slots. They can't continue it at this rate, because then by part 3 we're gonna have like 30 materia slots or something.
Like they could only add maybe like four more or something. I'm like, how are you gonna do this? Like at least compared to the original game. Usually I was around the max. I do have 2 things to say really quick. Just, oh my god, assess is so useful. I wish it was just a normal skill you could use without equipping materia.
Yeah, that's true.
It's every time I use it, I'm just like, I gotta put it on somebody, and sometimes like it's not on the right person, or I forget to equip it to someone else, so I gotta make like compromises here and there. It's just, I wish I could just do it like just in general, but that's neither here nor there. It's just a little thing. And the other thing I will say for any newcomers going into this game, do not sleep on chakra and prey materia. Those things are godsends, and I love those materia so much, especially prey. Oh my god, that helped me in so many nasty situations. Like just not having to use MP and solely ATB for that stuff is so good. I love those 2. But yeah.
Yeah, I used prey more so than chakra, but yeah, I definitely agree. It's really handy, especially just, the AoE heal on prey is really good.
So good.
But okay, I think let's move on to the next part of the discussion. And I made this a specific category because I heard a lot of talk about this, which is the pace and the general structure of the game. Because obviously Final Fantasy VII is at least semi-open world, but we only get the Midgar section of the game here in the first part, which is, I want to say, pretty linear for the most part. Was that an issue for you guys at all? And did you feel like the way the game paced itself was an issue at all, Marcos?
I think for me, it's interesting. I've noticed over the years that I don't think open world is necessarily my favorite. A lot of games where it is open world, I feel like immediately intimidated as to what to do, and sometimes I burn out without even doing what the game intends me to do because I try to do everything else around it, right? It's a double-edged sword. Open world does not necessarily mean better. And for me, I've grown to like shorter and linear games over the years because I never get lost, well, for the most part. And it's just, it makes sure that the pace is consistently, always going somewhere. Whereas an open world, you have that potential risk of derailing from what the main plot even is. So it makes sure that it's focused if it's linear, right? There is an advantage to that.
That's true, yeah.
It's I think the pace in the game is fine. At least for me, I think it's good because it has like highs and lows, like if it tried to keep up that constant crazy momentum from like the bombing mission, I think I'd be exhausted, right?
Yeah.
It'd be so intense every time that it would just have diminishing returns, right? You kind of need that lull in between all the crazy awesome stuff to just make you appreciate them every time they do come back. And the thing for me is I enjoy the slow moments in the story as well. I know there's a lot of people that said that they're not fans of that stuff, that it kind of dragged the game down. But for me, a lot of that stuff was the charming stuff. A lot of it was just character banter in between those events and just hearing what they had to say, or like, just kind of getting to know the world a bit more. I think it works out pretty well. I guess The only thing I would say is that when we're talking about pace and structure, are we also talking about like dungeons and stuff as well, a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That's
Okay.
also part of that.
Because I was going to say there were some parts where, level design wise, like it's not the pinnacle of dungeons I've seen. Like there's no crazy gimmicks. It's fairly simple puzzles and like structure. Which is fine. I didn't really mind because it's like that's not what I'm playing the game for, honestly, right? I'm not playing Final Fantasy VII Remake to play like the best dungeons and like exploration. I'm playing it for the story, for the character banter, and for the world building that is so great from the original game, right? But I understand that people, it feels like busy work, or sometimes it feels like the dungeons go on a bit too long, and I get that. There are some chapters that I like more than others, which I won't, spoil any of them here. But there were definitely some parts that, dragged a little bit, but it was never enough for me to, not enjoy myself when I was playing through them. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. Well, pretty much everything. The dungeons are nothing you would see in Zelda that have like these elaborate puzzles or anything. But
yeah, like no crazy unique gimmicks.
Exactly, but it is an RPG, so that's not really what the game is all about necessarily. There are a couple of unique mechanics to every dungeon, and I do like that every dungeon has its own identity because it has a unique little gimmick to it.
Yeah.
But they're not super elaborate, but they just break up the pace a little, between the different fights, and I think it works out excellently. And there are slow moments, like you said, climbing up the ladder sometimes takes a while, and then you can't just jump down from there like you would in real life. You gotta walk all the way around, for example, and it takes a little bit of time, and sometimes you're stuck to just walking speed and you can't run for certain sections. But and to other people that might be a flaw, but like you said, to me, I didn't mind those moments because those were excellent excuses to get some of the character building done, which we're going to talk about soon, by the way, the characters. And so I honestly thought the pace was fantastic, and the general structure of the game of like being linear, then opening up again for a couple of side quests, then being more linear again, then opening up again a little. Such a nice mix, really fun to play through. But Shin, what do you think about the pace and the structure? Is there anything that stood out to you as like particularly bad, or?
There are certain parts in linearity, certain parts towards the end and in the middle here and there. There are certain sections where I felt like it was a bit unnecessary.
You mean with how slow the game was?
Platforming.
Ah, I see.
It's not even climbing ladders. There's certain platforming sections that felt like it was just padding to me.
Yeah, okay.
But it was mostly a nitpick.
Yeah,
but they didn't last that long. They were pretty short. Like, they were short enough that they didn't really detract me that much. But, it just felt like it was trying to extend the game's, gameplay time more so at times,
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say you're more of an open world kind of guy or more of a linear kind of guy, Shin?
I'm gonna reiterate a little bit. I did like the way the system worked in the game, where it's like, we have linear parts, and then we go into like an open world type of part where we just do side quests, and then we just go to a linear part through story. It's a nice balance between all that stuff, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
But I am more so type of the open world guy, where I like to see all the possibilities around me. Find all the secrets. I like being kind of overwhelmed by how much that I can do, but at the same time, that the way the game worked fine for both worlds.
They struck a nice balance.
Yeah, it struck a nice balance. So I didn't mind it that much. But in a way, I kind of wish the game expanded a bit more.
Shin, do you wish the game had more side quests, more side activities to do?
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't enough for me.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say too. Sorry if I cut in. I think the side quests were a good amount, just so that I didn't feel like they overstayed their welcome. But I kind of wish there were more fights in between chapters. It feels like sometimes it was like 4 or 5 fights for like the next event, and it felt like sometimes it was a bit too short. I guess if that makes sense. Like I kind of wish like there were more opportunities to like really dig into that combat system more. Which it's weird because it's like, do I really want more fights, or do I really just want more boss fights in a way, right? Because I feel like for me those are always the times where I get to properly learn that stuff, but with normal boss or normal enemy encounters, they die too quickly for me to like actually learn mechanics and whatnot. It's so weird.
You know, I'd like to add a bit more. Technically the original game was kind of linear in itself.
Oh yeah.
So Midgar in itself was pretty linear in the original and didn't last as long as the remake.
Yeah.
So I can't really complain that much. But still, I would have loved to see a little bit more side quests, little bit more battles, as Marco said.
Yeah. Just a little bit. It's just like sometimes it wasn't enough. But that's not like I really can't stress it. I really didn't have a problem with it. It's just,
Nitpicking here, pretty much
bit.
now.
Yeah.
Literal nitpicking now. But whatever.
I want to say that for me, I think the amount of side quests was kind of just about perfect. Because the thing with side quests is that, if you have too many side quests, you run the risks of making the player feel as though they're missing out. Like, for example, if I don't do all these 100 side quests, I don't get the best weapons, I don't see all the funny moments. But then if you do want to do hundreds of side quests, then it's like, I don't want to be distracted from the main quest too long, I don't want to forget all the details, wait, what was this story detail about again? So I feel like it has its ups and downs if you have a lot of side quests. And, I could definitely understand why you would want to have more side quests. And also, it would just in general be an excuse to spend more time in this world, which is also nice. But I think when we're just talking purely about the side quests, I think for me personally, it struck the perfect balance of having just about enough of them. And there are, I think, like 2 side quests maybe that I missed, that I didn't see in my own playthrough. So I did like 95% of them. But yeah, I was really happy with the amount of side quests. I didn't feel like it detracted too much from the original game, and I didn't get burned out on doing them either. I think it was pretty perfect for me, at least.
Oh no, I'd agree with that too.
Yeah.
There's also the other perspective where adding replayability to try out the game again with all the other side quests, that you missed.
Yeah,
is
that's
still
true.
kind of nice. But it's like the game tried to strike a balance between, you having to do side quests and you having to do story, and it's trying to strike a balance with both worlds, which is appreciated.
Yeah, I think it was the right call. Sorry to interrupt once again. I think it was the right call just because a lot of casual fans who haven't played JRPGs in a while, they won't feel, like you said, overwhelmed, or they won't feel like they're getting held back from the story for too long. Granted, it is optional. You don't have to do these, but the rewards are good, right? It's a few side quests, but the rewards are always worth it every time you do them. So, again, it's a good balance and it's good incentives. So, yeah, I think they struck a good balance for sure, especially for fans who might not have played a Final Fantasy or JRPGs in years, but they want to see what this one's all about.
Yeah, and I want to mention one last thing about the general structure of the game. Because we mentioned this, the game goes back and forth between more linear and then a bit more open. And I think that is so much better than what they did in 15. Because
Absolutely.
In 15 you do have an open world. You can do all these great side quests, but then halfway through the main story, it's like, nope, that's enough open world. The game is now entirely linear until the end. And that is so weird. It feels like you're playing a whole different game all of a sudden. And the balance here is so much better, in my opinion. But yeah, Shin, what did you want to add?
With 15, that's the thing. With 15, you have your open world, but it felt empty.
Yeah, that's true.
Really empty.
It has like one town,
7,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And 7 Remake, when you're in a town, you see so many people talking. You you encounter so many people as you walk around, and they're all voice acted. Just the fact that the towns are really lively in the remake, compared to like what 15's just few towns that it has.
Yeah.
I was speechless. Like
15 has like one prominent town, and the rest are like gas stations or corner stores. Man, like it's not. I like that game, but there are some parts that I can't defend.
Pretty much.
Including as well, just really quick, just that 15 had a lot of restrictions for how open world it was. God forbid you go out at night. God forbid you can't go with a car. Monsters will mess you up. Oh my god, it's
Ignis
like, why have
you.
a day and night cycle if I don't want to go out at night?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, but with 7 Remake, I'm like, even if I'm out of the town, you still see people throughout the path.
Yep.
Still talking, still interacting with each other, still interesting to listen to. And I'm like, wow, they really strike a balance with how much you can interact with the world and the NPCs. It feels alive, not empty at all.
Yeah, and the NPCs you encounter, they always have something to say about what's going on in the story currently, or about what just happened. They all have it feels like they're all being impacted by that, and it makes the world feel alive. And I guess that's a good segue into the next part of the discussion here, our general thoughts about the story and the characters without going too much into specifics and spoilers. But I'm just gonna ask you guys, let's start with Marcos. Were you satisfied with the way they portrayed the story and the characters in this game?
I was. I'd say like 90%. I was satisfied, which like we'll get into stuff later.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they made like it's so faithful that I could not stop smiling when I was playing this game. When I recognized certain events and just seeing how much they expanded them, or even the more prominent one that's not really a huge spoiler, but like obviously with Midgar being expanded, you're gonna see more interactions between like Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, and they all just get so fleshed out that I get so attached to them more than I ever did in the original. You know, like it's phenomenal. They all have their own little things, but the part that I was worried about the most in general was if they really understood these characters that were established and loved for years from the original game, but I'll be real, they were kind of ruined in like I guess like the compilation in general. You know, like Advent Children Aerith is very different from original Aerith. Same thing with Cloud and a whole bunch of the cast. So it's just like, did they just forget what made these characters so great, you know? And it's I couldn't be happier to see that they just nailed all these little things that just make me love Cloud and this cast like all over again. I'm just like, they absolutely killed it. It was so great. Like one of the first like early moments that a lot of people like from the demo of the Vine mission is you know, when Cloud has to do that jump to like, you know, save himself from the part that collapses when the bombing's happening, and he just has that little smirk, that little smile, and all this time you get this impression that this man's trying too hard to look cool, right? And that's the whole point. But it's, oh my god, there are so many good interactions that just had me laughing among the cast. It's such good banter that I never want to see Square Enix like downgrade from this ever. I truly love the cast. They nailed the charm and the personality of this world. I can't get enough of them. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But Shin, let's hear from you first before I go into a couple of details. What do you think generally about the story and characters?
The banter you hear throughout the whole thing is just giving you a smile every time.
Yeah.
That's true.
God.
Like every single voice actor has done such a good job that I just can't. I can't imagine like the amount of takes they had, the amount of time they really put into every single piece of line they put into the game. It's just a treat to listen to every single person talking like in the game.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
insane.
Yeah,
That's
it's
pretty much it. Yeah.
I think it's really awesome how they kind of expanded on some of the characters,
Mhm.
and I mean, I want to say they did change some of the characters somewhat, but not in the sense like you were talking about, Marcos, about Advent Children, how they feel like different characters. It's more so that you learn more about the characters, the same characters that already existed.
Yeah, it's almost like you find new layers that you didn't know were
Exactly.
there.
You learn a couple more traits about them. And specifically, I want to say the two most improved characters are Barrett and Aerith. Aerith in particular, she's more of a, I guess, reserved character in the original Final Fantasy VII, as far as I remember. Whereas in this one, she's kind of sassy, and she kind of has these little stabs at Cloud sometimes. That really adds a lot to her character. She's so endearing in this game. And Barrett too. Barrett is maybe the best character in this game for me.
He gets the most improved award for me, like without a doubt. I did not, like, brutally honest. I did not care much for Barrett from the original. He seemed so hot-headed and so just, I don't know, just like super emotional and like impulse heavy. And that's like the kind of character he is. Like he just goes in when he feels like, you know, super emotional about it, or when he's that invested. But I never understood why this guy of all people ended up being the leader for Avalanche, right? I just didn't see it. How does this hot-headed dude become the one that gives orders and keeps them all in line? And this game really shows that charisma, right? Like he has that fun side to him. He also has the moments where he has to almost show his, like, I don't know, his composure, like just kind of going away a little bit, actually showing that he's like really panicked and worried for these people and their well-being. And it's just, you really get the sense that he has, like, he's trying a lot, but in the end he does still have those emotions like anyone else would. He's not just this very impulsive guy anymore, and he really does have leader material. I can totally see it more in this remake than in the original game, no question.
Yep.
And Aerith definitely improves. She had some outgoing moments in the original, but she's definitely one of those characters where the voice acting just enhances that banter and that back and forth. Like you can really just notice the more playful side she has with the delivery in this remake. But yeah, go
she's
ahead,
still
Shin.
quirky. She's still quirky in the original for me.
Yeah.
And she's just even more quirkier and even more better in the remake.
Yeah.
So I was like, yep, that's the Aerith I know.
Pretty much. So I was like, oh, thank God it's not Advent Children, or if it's like that's the original one that I remember. And my sister, who she doesn't know the characters that much, she fell in love with Aerith, like probably her favorite character along with Barrett as well. And I'm like, pretty much, yeah, they should be, because they are both really well done along with the rest of the cast. But those two are standouts for this remake for me.
Yeah. They definitely amplified their personalities with the voice acting. That's for sure.
Yeah, with Barrett in particular, it's like you said, he's a hot-headed guy, and sometimes you get the impression as though Barrett doesn't know what the hell he's doing, or he doesn't have any plan. But then when it really comes down to it, when it really counts, he knows exactly what to say and to get the spirits up of everyone, and to make everyone feel like they're all a part of each other and they're in this together. Right? He really knows what to say in these tough moments. But okay, I think this is about as much as we can say without going into spoilers. So I think it's about time to go into that spoiler discussion at this point. So this is the big spoiler warning. If you haven't played the game yet and you do care about potentially being spoiled, then you should probably skip ahead to the next timestamp when we return from the spoiler discussion for our final verdict. But yeah, let's go a bit more in depth into the story and into the characters, specific moments that we liked, for example, or like just, you know, in overall, what do we think about how the events played out? Shin, let's start with you. Is there anything you want to mention in particular about the story and characters?
You can go everywhere, man.
Talk about the Nomura ghosts. Or better yet, Destiny ghosts. Or better yet,
I feel like that's gonna tie into the end.
That's a mix of memes there. I'm sorry. That was totally in the beginning, though.
It was.
Yeah.
It's just that like the conversation might go into the end of it. So yeah.
I know, but
Yeah.
I'm just like, so many times I look at the, even though it seems to be like the story seems to go by the original, there are so many new changes that I've seen to the story that complement each other throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And when I first saw those ghosts, I'm like, what is going on?
God,
What is this?
it started to click with me like after a few times of seeing them. But yeah, at first I was like, oh,
Like, I don't want to go to the ending here because this is, of course, going towards the ending. But
yeah,
there's a lot of what's happening throughout the story. There were a lot of changes with those ghosts here and there. The way they put the story throughout compared to the original, certain characters going in and out of scenes for some reason. And I was surprised they still kept it the way it is. I don't know how to explain it.
yeah,
I'm still have a bit of a fuzzy memory from the original because I need to replay the original a little bit more, just to remember some of it. But I remember certain scenes were completely changed throughout, but still kept to what the original content was. Kind of like dealing with the Mako reactors, dealing with, the way Jesse was interacting with you a lot more than the original. I was like, holy crap. Sorry, I have too many things going on in my head right now. But
Okay.
you know what, Marcos, what do you think? Sorry.
If he's available.
Oh, if he's available. Sorry, I guess I'll continue. But yeah,
No,
the
I mean,
ghost is. Yeah, go ahead, Zigata.
yeah, about the ghosts specifically, the whispers, right? I gotta be honest, I didn't figure out what they were all about until Red 13 basically lays it out. Because, like I said in the beginning, I don't remember all the details of Final Fantasy VII. And so, if you know all the details, you probably realize what they did in the beginning when they first show up, how they make sure that Cloud and Aerith meet, and then how they also make sure that Aerith leaves, like she does in the original. But I didn't remember the details of how specifically that encounter went down in the original, and so I couldn't jump to that conclusion right away.
I remembered immediately, and when I looked at it, I was like, these guys weren't here at all?
Oh yeah, I know that they weren't there, but what I didn't know is what exactly they did in that scene. And how that scene would have differed from the original if the ghosts weren't there. I didn't, make that connection. So I didn't figure out what the whispers were all about until, Red 13 explains it.
Yeah, and the way the cutscenes were, there were more added Sephiroth scenes.
yeah.
And I was very surprised we had more Sephiroth scenes, and even the devs beforehand said it before that we'd have more background on Sephiroth. And people were saying that before. It's like, okay, so they're putting more emphasis on Cloud's like headaches that he has.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the ghost, I was like, was that part of his hallucinations too? And I was like, no, this is not where it's going at. There's something more to this. I see where they were kind of going throughout the playthrough. I was like, huh. I see changes because of these ghosts.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
It's nuts. God, where do I begin? So with the ghosts, I definitely started noticing it when it's weird because I thought at first we were gonna be this like antagonistic force that would just get in the way of stuff. But I started to realize what they were doing when they were actually helping out in certain points where they were like interrupting enemies from like hurting the cast or, making sure that things go a certain way in the story that I remember.
Yeah.
Especially in, I want to say, like, chapter 12, was it? When, like, the whole fight was, like, raging on in, like, the Avalanche HQ. And knowing that, of course, certain characters are going to die. And I saw them interfering to make sure that they fail in their last moment, their last, like, hurrah that they have to do. And I was just like, okay. So I guess they're guaranteeing that they're going to die, like Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse are going to have their final moment. Now it's just like, oh, okay, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to ensure that the original, story happens in a way. So that was interesting because for me, that was when I started to realize when they were interfering, when I saw them interfering with like the more obvious plot points of the original game that are kind of harder to remember or to forget. Sorry. But man, as far as character moments go, though, there's a few chapters in particular that just really impressed me. Chapter 4 was definitely one of the first ones where I was just like, man, the expansion that they did to this like world was brilliant for me because like I love Chapter 4. It was very simple, you know. They just go and see like the upper plate to go see like Jesse's mom, you know, because they're trying to like steal something. But well, first of all, that bike chase sequence of the first time was fantastic. It looks so good. But then it introduces like Roche, who's like this new character, and he's like batshit crazy. I love it. But yeah, then just seeing this like almost calmer moment between like, you know, the 3 Avalanche members and Cloud, and just like seeing learning like Jesse's backstory, which was never like established in the original. But it's really nice to see these characters more, and the music, the new music as well, because then Jessie has like a new, or pretty much like her theme now. They added like musically, and it's this really nice piece that I loved hearing throughout that chapter. But it's just, oh my god, like tons of like great character moments in Chapter 4. But I think everybody, mostly everybody, can agree. I'm not sure if, you know, any of you guys will disagree, but Chapter 9. Oh my lord, Wall Market is like the pinnacle of expanding and adding to something that was already great and just making it better. Like, oh my god, Chapter 9, dude, that is easily the best chapter for me. The other ones are great too, but Jesus, man.
It's the most memeable chapter for sure.
Oh yes. Some parts were removed. I was surprised, but I was like,
Same.
It makes sense, but you know.
There was a certain room I was looking for at the Honeybee Inn.
Yeah.
I remember muscles.
Yeah, I was like, where's that room? But no, oh my god, it's great. Like that chapter had me smiling way too much. The frickin' sauce. Oh my lord, I can't believe they kept that quest line in and everything. Like so many of the old ones. It's great.
The sauce.
The dancing minigame though was when I just lost my shit.
That was a Yakuza moment.
Oh
Truly,
yeah, that felt
like,
really Yakuza.
Oh my god, I was just like, yes, I'm on board. Please do more. Oh man. But yeah, just in general, really great character moments throughout. If I had to, gosh, what would be my favorite? Oh, I think it really, like, it's so hard to just pick one for each of them. Definitely Aerith on the rooftops is like still a fantastic introduction to her character. Of course, when she has to climb the ladder and then she just has to say shit after admitting that it's like, oh god, I do need help. That's a great one.
How did you feel when she was like, "You mad?"
I love it. Oh my lord. I love Cloud being so petty, saying like, I don't think you're cut out for Soldier, never mind. Like, it's just great. I live for that stuff. I did like in a side quest that was about to start with some of the kids in Sector 5. You know, Cloud said, like, you know, saying like initially like, well, I'm not gonna do this for free, you guys gotta give me money. And then just like has this like slight little change of heart. It's just like, hey, you know what? It's your lucky day. I got a special discount. I'll do it for 3 gil. And I'm like, yes, that's the warm side. Once you get through that cold heart where he's trying so hard to be cool, but he's got a heart of gold. I love that shit.
Except for one quest where he was trying to help an old man at the graveyard over at the slums.
That is true. For some reason, there are like 2 side quests that end very negative. There's one in Sector 7 as well.
Cloud was a jerk at the end, though.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes with his character, in a way. Cloud is supposed to be a jerk. In a way.
I got the impression that his intention was to kind of tell the old guy that, you know, maybe he's not as old and decrepit as he thinks he is, and maybe he can still do this and walk to the graveyard, and he shouldn't feel down, and so he's kind of forcing him forcing this old man to give it a try and to show more effort. I think that might have been his.
That's kind of how
intention.
I took it, but yeah, it's a little ambiguous. It could be either or. Oh man, I know for definitely for Barrett though, one of my favorites is just anytime you interacted with Marlene. Barrett is best at. That was so adorable. I live for that. He's a big bear.
When he first gets home and he's like, "You've been a good little girl. You know what else good little girls do? They go to bed on time." It's that's the first time you see a completely different side of him. Because you do the bombing run and he's like a jerk to Cloud basically throughout the mission. And then you see this completely different side of him, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I want to say my favorite part of the game is probably the whole thing with Aerith, from the church to basically until you reunite with Tifa and you're in the sewers, because that's the point where, you know, not only do you get a lot of insight into who Aerith is, but I feel like there's also a lot of development on Cloud's front, because that's when he opens up a little bit, right? He does the high five, sort of reluctantly.
Oh my god, I loved it, yeah.
Well, the first time he straight out refuses it, then he does it kind of reluctantly, and
there's this one part, sorry, where he's just looking at his hands like, oh, what am I supposed to do with these?
Can I really do this?
Oh god.
And then later, I think there's even one point after the Colosseum or something where he even kind of initiates the high five. Then you see this progression, which is really awesome, and Cloud opens up as a character. Although you could make the argument that maybe with the whole dancing scene, he opens up maybe a little bit too much and too quickly and too abruptly.
Man.
Yeah.
Desperate times. Oh, one quick thing, because I know after this it's like, you know, going on to like end game stuff.
Yeah.
There's like a few small things that I have to say are so satisfying and great to see, but if I had to just point out to one, oh my god, did you guys get all the dialogue or like keep messing around with like the new recruit that's like near Sector 7 that's supposed to be on guard duty, but he's terrible at it?
Oh, I only got one line of dialogue. I didn't try to go for all his different lines, but I saw it on your stream, I think, when you talked to him.
Like at least like 3 or 4, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so charming. But then seeing it all come full circle, like when the Sector 7 plate's about to fall, and he's the one that has that little hero moment where he opens the damn gate and does not like wimp out on it, and he's just like, no, I'm not gonna follow that order, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. And I'm like, yes, this little character arc with just this one NPC, I live for that. It's so good.
Funny,
But yeah,
the original kind of actually made that almost exact dialogue, you know, from the original. I was surprised by that, by those 2 guards.
god, it's so good.
Sorry, but yeah.
No,
it's
good, but
by that.
that's what's so good. Like, there's just these little things that I did not expect them to carry over, and they're just like, nope, almost every little detail, we got you, we know.
Is that the same guard that eventually lets Wedge and the people through then, when the whole plate thing happens?
Yeah, that's a little moment.
Yeah. Nice. Do you have anything to add, to discuss, to gush about, or maybe to critique about the story and characters aside from the ending?
Adding in spoilers from, you know, nitpicks. I did not like the monkey bar segment. There's the machine hand segment that was with Aerith and Cloud. Yeah. And then I was like, what is this? It's nice to get materia, but it's taking too long to go through.
The animations were pretty slow on that one. Like, I like the music in the Collapse Expressway, but yeah, the robot hand gimmick was a little weird. There was a point where I got stuck longer than I should have on like the 3rd part where you had to use it.
With the 2 hands?
Yeah, because long story short, I had the right idea the first time to get her over, but did not get the circle prompt to have her ride, so I assumed it was wrong, and then I just I messed around trying to find other solutions, thinking that was the wrong one. But that's just what happens when games do like context sensitive, right? Like, you gotta place the hand at a certain point, lower it, don't be too close or you won't get the prompt, and she'll be like, what are you doing? So I was like, I was just like, okay, well, I messed up. But yeah, it took longer than it should have to get it done. The animations are pretty slow.
Yeah. There's one thing that I like too. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Shin.
Speaking of tedium and other stuff, what's nice and tedious that I really actually loved in the game? The stairs in Shinra headquarters.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. Wait, did we all take the stairs?
I took the stairs for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. There's one thing that made me really sad that would have made my day in the game itself. It's very, I don't know, it's nitpicky, but it was the most convoluted ways to get a certain weapon in the original, and it's that horn from Kate Sith.
Yeah.
Behemoth form. And usually when you go up those stairs all the way, then you could just go all the way back down to get the weapon.
Did you do that?
Oh, I didn't check, but was there like different dialogue for that?
Nope, there was none. And I was like so disappointed. They had a good opportunity to put it like a weapon right there in the stairs just to tease people whoever completed, like 100%ed the FF7.
Wait, did you go all the way down and use the elevators afterwards? Because I know there was different dialogue for that in the original.
No, but I tried to do it in a way more so to get the weapon. That's why.
Yeah, no.
I really wanted to figure out to get the weapon. I was like, that would have made my day so badly.
Yeah.
But I went down and up the stairs, double check everything. I was like, "Aww,
man,
no." But it makes sense because Kate Sith wasn't a playable character in the remake anyway, so it doesn't make sense to put the behemoth horn there.
I was not expecting him to show up at all in the remake.
Yeah,
he just had that one little scene. I was like, whoa.
That was kind of jarring, yeah.
It makes sense because he did, he was kind of like a spy for Shinra, like in the original game. But man, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that at all.
Thinking of Dirge Cerberus for some reason when I saw Kate Sith there. I was like, wait, this is not the right game I'm looking at. What am I looking at?
God.
Anyway.
How did you feel about Red 13 not being playable? Was that an issue to you guys?
Kind of. But I was like, yeah, it's understandable because it's really towards the end of the game.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
But I was like, it would have been nice to make him playable. Plus, there was, and since we're in spoiler discussion, post-game content. So I was like, would have made sense for him to be playable still,
Yeah, like the VR missions or something they could have done, It's like, I do agree, but at the same time, I can't get too upset when I consider how finely tuned that battle system is that I know they would have, had to tack on a good few days just to implement him because... when I do that combat system or consider the mounting, they deliberately try to make sure everyone's unique and fun and are not overpowered in any way, right? So I'm like, I understand. It's a lot of work for potentially something that might not be used a lot by the end. But with that being said, I hope he's really fun, in part 2. Because it's always cool to see how games handle quadrupeds or beast-like animals in games. It's just the animation work is way more impressive when it's not just humans. So I'm really curious to see how they make him work gameplay wise.
Yeah, I wonder what his unique ability is gonna be. Maybe he's gonna be able to, I don't know, jump on enemies and pin them down temporarily or something. That'd be cool.
Or, smell them and it just sense their weaknesses.
That would be,
God.
that would be a version of SS, I guess, then.
Yeah, free
Without
SS,
the materia.
people.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be down for that. But, yeah, I was going to ask, the ending discussion, does that include the Shinra bit at all? Because I do want to talk about it just a little bit.
I want to say one more thing before we go into ending stuff, though.
Yeah, okay.
This one nitpick. I wish I could change party members.
Yeah.
I got really annoyed that I couldn't switch between party members during that certain boss fight in the Shinra headquarters. I was like, come on, really? And then even towards the end, it was that one boss fight that looked like an eel.
Yeah,
Genova's chamber.
Yeah.
And I was like, I that part kind of annoyed me that I had to switch between materia, but between a lot of characters because they always force you to do 3 characters throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all of a sudden I have to switch between these 2 other characters, switch between 4 characters, but in pairs.
Yeah.
So I was
That entire dungeon for me with the back and forth was where I was just like, I wish assess wasn't required because
they should
I
have
have to
given
keep
more.
switching materials.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
to make sure I could scan every
It was
like unique enemy or mini boss.
Tedious, yeah. But it wasn't that bad. I did like the fact that the boss battle was going between like the pairs like that.
That
It
was
kind
awesome.
Yeah,
that
it
was kind of
really
cool.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I think that it's actually interesting because I didn't do this, but I saw a little bit of Maximilian Dude's playthrough towards the end of the game. You know, when all the characters meet up again at the end of that dungeon, and then Maximilian Dude makes a decision to head back down the elevator and check out some of the dungeon again to see if there's anything else he might have missed. And when you go back down into the dungeon, sort of in reverse, the game actually lets you choose your party members, which I found interesting at that point.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah.
Because I did notice it at the end of Maximilian's playthrough that all of a sudden you could choose Barrett towards the end.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? That didn't happen on
Interesting.
my playthrough.
Yeah. Man, that Shinra Gauntlet was freaking sick. Oh my lord. Like, that was like the peak of like the combat for me. I was just like, yes, boss fight after boss fight. Oh my god. I could not get enough of it. It had like fights with like 2 party members. Cloud had like this like sick one-on-one with Rufus that took me a while to get, but I was getting used to it, and I can't wait to relearn like all of the fight next time. Oh my lord. Even like the Aerith and Bear fight, like at the end where I wasn't sure if they're gonna do it on like the 2 elevators like the original game because that looked a little goofy. But man, even that fight was really fun too. Because it just reminded me a lot of like the Scorpion fight again. Like it feels like every boss fight like type that they've done throughout the game was in that gauntlet, and it was fantastic to just play through. Like everything started coming together, and oh my lord, like out of all of the parts of the soundtrack that made me the happiest, Genova's Phase 3 music, where like the
I was
main
about
melody,
to mention that.
holy shit, I was so hype. I'm just like, yes, they knew exactly what I wanted to hear. Oh my god, it was so good. I loved everything about that gauntlet with all those boss fights. Fucking
Pretty
amazing.
much. There wasn't supposed to be a Genova fight in Shinra headquarters, which is weird, but I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'll take it.
God.
It was
Yeah,
supposed to be in like a ship, but you went against Genova first. I was like,
Yeah.
what? But yeah, go ahead.
I think the Genova fight was my favorite, not just because the music, also the visual, the visual representation. You were in some kind of illusion, I guess.
Yeah.
The story hints
Pretty much,
towards.
yeah.
But the whole room where you fight the boss, the whole room itself looks amazing. And then you have the weird tentacles, and it's got, you know, the fight has the unique mechanics where you gotta take out the tentacles first before you can hurt the boss. And this epic Genova music is playing, and
God.
probably my favorite fight in the game.
Yeah.
And that's where the gameplay just kind of clicked for me. And it's quite a lengthy boss fight, and at times I just kind of felt like I was in the zone, you know what I mean? Like I just
Same.
kind of blended out everything around me, and just everything was so natural. Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I would add then. Did you guys miss or like wish they had the part from the original where you were like stuck in the cells and like Sephiroth had like this whole blood trail going on? Because I know a lot of people wish that was in the remake. For me, I was like, I don't mind it. They did enough new stuff with Shinra HQ that I enjoyed, but I know for a lot of people they like that segment of the original.
I still did, honestly, but it didn't really bother me as much.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I definitely think they did the Shinra HQ justice for sure. Just the amount of time you spent in there too. I was surprised by that actually, because
Same.
I remember there was this one point when the game is for the first time like, are you sure you want to continue here? Because you're not going to be able to do more side quests when you use the what's it called, the hook shot or whatever to,
Yeah.
you know,
Climb
basically
the wall.
yeah, climb back up to the
I'm
plate.
surprised you didn't climb up a big cable. It was just hooks. Darn.
But yeah, at that point I was like, I'm probably close to beating it, the game, and then I kept going for 10 or 11 hours more.
Yeah, I was
Kinda
surprised at how
crazy.
long it was past the point of no return in
Yeah.
general. One last weird question, because this is like the only time I was confused. Did anybody struggle on like knowing to climb the cars as like Tifa when she was in her own separate segment in Shinra? Because that took me a minute to find the interactable like icon. Like it did not show up as immediately as I would have liked. I was just roaming around that square room to just figure out how to like get anywhere.
It took me a little bit, but I relatively quickly figured out what to do. I will say though, with the interactive icon, there was another section on the top of Shinra HQ where you have to go outside on the right side of the room and then go all the way around and climb back up the ladder on the other side. And for some reason, the ladder just perfectly blended in with the environment. I could not see the ladder for like 2 minutes or something. And I didn't see the little
I know
icon
which part you're talking about.
at the bottom of it. And I just didn't see the ladder. And I was like, wait, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
So I had that issue, but in a different spot.
Yeah, I was just pointing out because that was like the only time where I was just confused as to where to go. Despite the game being so linear, I was like, am I just like lost? I thought it was like something we had to find on like a desk or something, but it's just like, oh no, it's the cars. Go on top of the cars, of course.
Yeah, but then it's only one specific card too, I think, that allows you to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't really say much because honestly, that didn't have that much of a problem, so I'm sorry.
It's like, damn, flawless.
Yeah, flawless victory. Okay, I think it's about time we talk about the ending, right? So chapter 17, chapter 18, I guess, what our personal feelings are, and maybe some of the interpretation about what's actually going on.
Shin, you go first. It's crazy, man.
You have the honor,
Let's
Shin.
play some 4D chess, y'all. Let's get into it.
Oh boy, I was like, dude, I see Nomura all over the place. I'm not okay, a lot of people would like to blame Nomura for the ending right now, but honestly, the same scenario writer from the original was part of it.
Yeah, Kitase worked on this too.
Yeah, so I was like, it's not Nomura's fault completely here. Hello.
They all were down for it.
Honestly, I'm like, hey, let's go. Like, me and Soulblade earlier were like, hey, yeah, those are Nomura ghosts.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, towards the end, I was like, wait, we're going out of the highway here, and towards the end, we just go into the open world. I didn't expect to go into a different dimension.
Same.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is going on? All this dialogue is all over like Kingdom Hearts talk to me. Are we talking about darkness here or something? Sorry. But we're talking about destiny. This
Boundless, terrifying freedom, yeah.
Destiny's crossroads. Boundless freedom. And I was like,
the edge of creation.
And then I went in, I was like, whoa. Am I dealing with a big ass heartless in front of me right now?
Yeah, I saw this one ending discussion video where the guy was like, so at the end you fight the boss that you fight at the beginning of every Kingdom Hearts game.
It's my exact first thought.
Oh my god.
And I was like, wait. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to get some separate pieces of that Heartless. And every time I was like, wait, why am I seeing memories of the ending of freaking the original game? I was like, where the hell is this going, man? I was like, no way. Are you guys serious? You're giving me all these memories of the original game. And when you think of Destiny's Crossroads, I'm like, don't you even. Oh, heck no.
Even Red 13 saying this is what happens when we fail, but it's like, guys, but that's the original game. Oh my god, it's insane.
And then I was like, okay, I was like, if this is the final boss, then my rating would have gotten down, honestly.
Yeah.
My rating would have gotten down by 1 point at least. But after that, I was like, wait, there's something else. Where is it? And then all of a sudden, we have a Sephiroth boss fight. And then if you heard me on stream, I was like, what the fuck? What is this? What am I doing here?
It even plays One Winged Angel. Yeah.
And then I hear One Winged Angel. I was like, oh my god, I did not expect this. I thought I'd wait a decade for this to happen.
God.
And I was like, okay, yeah, we're going through a Sephiroth boss fight. what is this? I was having so much fun with this boss fight that he was trying to overwhelm me. I was trying to kill him as fast as possible. The dude had so many nice cutscenes and sections. Like, I was so
insane.
surprised they put in so much work into that fight.
God.
And I was like, right towards the end, when I saw his literal one-winged angel stance going off, like
God.
his wing coming out, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'm fanboying so much right now. Sorry, Advent Children, but this is way better right now.
Way
Sorry.
better.
It's like an
Way
interactive
better.
version of Advent Children, kind of. At the end.
Yeah, the whole environment was an homage to Advent Children, though.
Yeah.
I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
wow, but they did it better.
Yep.
And just seeing Aerith, like, with the boss fight itself, just say, who cares? Even though he's a bad guy, he's tough. He's like, nah, who cares? Let's just beat
Yeah.
him.
It's
love
so
Aerith.
good.
But it's like, dude, I just love how the team has come together to just go against him, and just Sephiroth pulling off all of his stunts and his OP stuff, as well as like his phases were very well done.
Oh yeah.
And then after the boss fight itself, even though it says, oh, you defeated Sephiroth, we go into what we are like expecting a decade, to see.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Where are we
When
going
I-
into Omni-Slash territory?
When I saw those shots and like the same camera angle, like
Yeah.
descending downward, I was like, oh my God, they're not. This is like one of my favorite things in video games or callbacks ever, where like it reminds me of when like Monster Hunter World had these trailers for like new monsters, and it's like these teases that are just like, what does this mean? It's just fire and like a slash. This doesn't tell me anything. But it reminds me of that, where it's just like those like flash cuts, like back to Sephiroth, back to Cloud, like in the same exact times. Like if someone was like new to this, just like watching for the first time, it's like it's just an editorial thing. What's the big deal? It's
Pretty
like, no,
much.
listen, you don't get it. You don't get what this means. Oh my God. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's so good.
And then
Christ.
just seeing the animation between Sephiroth and Cloud going off, I was like, wait, are we going to have an Omni-Slash here or something?
God.
I was expecting Omni-Slash very early. I was like, wait, really? Are we there? Are we already there? I was like, no, they're just fighting each other off. But the animation was great.
Oh yeah.
I was like, kudos. We're at the edge of creation fighting each other off.
God.
Yeah, do you think we were actually there, or was that something that was going on in Cloud's mind?
That's the thing. All the characters went into the same portal.
Because I'm pretty sure the Sephiroth that you fight at the end when you're still playing the game is just another one of those copies, right? But
In a way, it could be a memory, in a way, but at the same time, it wasn't the exact same memory.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Sephiroth wanted help from Cloud to help him with his ambitions, his dreams, or whatever he's going for. But that wasn't part of the original. That is just completely edited in or just new. But it
I
was
want to
weird.
say.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if it's like the original, I want to say it might be in Cloud's mind,
yeah,
or maybe it's just like the way, because it was strictly just Cloud and Sephiroth at that point.
Yeah. Pretty
Yeah.
much.
So it might not be like 100% real, but it might be the same thing as like the original, where it's like it kind of is like this mental void almost, you know.
Be half and half, but
It's real to him. You know?
freaking like the way Sephiroth was like, yeah, try to help me, but
and
I
Cloud's nope.
was like, nope. Cloud was like, nope, I'm not gonna listen to you. And good for Cloud, but at the end of it, there was some very thought-provoking things that Sephiroth did in that fight, in that memory.
Oh yeah.
However he did it, there was a lot of thought-provoking stuff, but I kind of just want to go a little bit more forward with the ending, a bit more before I mention that. But
Man.
afterwards I was like, all that, wow, beautiful. Where is this going though?
Yeah.
Where is this going?
Exactly.
And then we get to see, the proper ending, and we're like, wait, Zack is alive? He survived this battle? What
God.
is this?
I had
And
no
then-
words the first time you showed up. I just had my jaw dropped. I was like, wait a minute.
I was
The
like,
same cutscene too, bro. The same thing from Crisis Core. Oh my lord.
and then he's like, hey, Cloud, I did it! I freaking did it, Cloud! You saw me? I'm like, what? What?
God.
Excuse me? What? You're supposed to be dead.
Oh,
How are
my
you just
Lord.
waving at Cloud, be like, hey, I just went through my own death and survived.
I lived, bitch. I'm like, what?
And I was like, okay, yeah, what's going on? Am I
Pretty
God.
much.
And then I saw Jesse's gloves on the table, and then I saw, Biggs just living on the bed. I'm like, oh, he's alive. I was like, oh, yeah.
God.
What is
It's
going
insane, yeah.
on? And I kept going. I see particles. I guess those are Destiny
God.
particles.
Mm.
And Destiny has been changed. All those nice little bright particles in the air. It feels nice, man. And then we see Zach.
Gives you good feels, but all it gives me is confusion.
Then you see Zach and Cloud just like walking towards Midgar. I'm like, oh well, yeah. Going.
God.
Well, yeah.
And then it ended on, oh, the unknown journey will continue. I was like, oh. Oh.
I'm glad it's continuing. Thank you, Nomura.
So,
and then, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, there are a lot of different scenes and details that we can speculate about. But I want to say, before we get into like our theories and interpretations, let's quickly hear from Marcus what his overall opinion was of the ending, and then I want to say a couple of things. Because Shin, I think, I mean, at least that's the way it's coming across to me. You enjoyed the ending overall? You're a fan of it?
I don't think it's maybe biased or not, but it's like, me 110%ing the original, I got so burnt out.
Yeah.
Like, to the point that I just never wanted to play the original anymore.
Yeah, I see.
So I was actually pretty excited where the events were going to, honestly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, I would have loved to have the old content back in like the next parts, but honestly, having a new flavor just piques my interest a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, what do you think, Marcus?
Well, since Jin mainly summarized most of it, well, the bike chase sequence was insane. I love that. But I wasn't sure what was going to happen after that. Like, how are they going to end this? And then suddenly, the Arbiters of Fate show up. And it's just like, oh, right, those guys are still a thing, right? Like, taking over Shinra Tower and then, like, showing up here. God, it's insane, because I was like, oh man, we're home free almost and stuff. I was just like, nah, you got to deal with me now. God, every time with this dude. But yeah, holy shit, I was not expecting it, because I thought like we were so close to the end compared to the original game. I was like, what are they about to throw at me, right? And it's like this last twist, this last section that I couldn't finish all in one session. I had to like come back the second day. But oh my god, it was such a swerve, but at the same time, in some ways, I didn't see it coming per se, but I knew they couldn't keep ignoring this stuff forever. At some point, they'd have to confront what the heck these ghosts even are, right? Like, because they showed up briefly every time, but then they would leave it. I'm like, all right, is this going to go on for like part 2 or something? Like I'm expecting this to be brought up completely, right? Mm-hmm. So it's so wild. Like, there's a lot we could like speculate on, but it's so crazy to see a lot of this stuff happen. And for some people, it feels like it came out of nowhere, but the game does a good job of telling you pretty much all throughout the game that things are not what they seem. As early as the opening cutscene, right, where it's Aerith's like opening shot and everything, but you hear these bits of One-Winged Angel in there. And she's running away from something. She looks back at that alley that is not from the original game's FMV. She notices something is there all throughout, and there are scenes where, it seems like she's gonna die. Like, it seems like there's stuff where it's like these characters are going off what we expect, and then it all just comes to a head in this section. And it's insane how these characters talk about fate and destiny, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess that was a thing that was like the ghosts were trying to get in on, which I had a feeling of, but it was good to see like confirmation. Yep. But oh my lord, I could clearly tell Aerith was like a mouthpiece for like the developers when she was talking, right? It's just like you can just tell. It's like, man, this is so out there for what she normally is that it's just like, okay. I think the devs are trying to tell me that, yeah, they want that freedom a little bit, and like, you know, we'll get into that later. But holy shit, those fights were actually, oh my god, like they were pretty easy at first, but when Bahamut, or like the thing that looks like Bahamut, showed up, I was like, oh my god, okay, this guy's actually wailing pretty tough. He does so much damage. I was like, oh god, kind of panicking here. I made it through after like a few attempts. Man, no checkpoints either. You got to do all those fights raw, completely straight, until you get to Sephiroth. Then you get a checkpoint. But it was still enjoyable to do. Even like the assess that they have is like, you know, when you scan them, like it's got some interesting stuff. I'll save that for when we gotta like speculate. But man, it's just, it feels like this like completely disconnected thing from, you know, the world. Like you're taken to this part that's just like, is this the same game? Right? Like it's crazy. Not just in terms of like, you know, the Kingdom Hearts stuff, as they say, but just like the setting and like the music is like completely original, and it's just like, what are these things supposed to be? Where is this location? Like it's insane. But it was still really cool and well done, until we get to like the Sephiroth fight, where I'm just like, oh my god, the theme is great. It's fucking awesome. There was a move that I did not want to figure out what the hell it did, and Aerith got like the killing blow. There was a point where like two characters died, Aerith was down to 1 HP on my stream, and I still lived with 1 ATB just praying for that thing. Oh my god, it was the most tense moment of the fight for me. Somehow still lived. But there was a point where he was counting down, I think from like 5 to like, you know, 4, and I think the most that I got was like 2. I was like, okay, fuck this. I'm not waiting till you get to 1. I don't want to know what happens when you get to 1, because I imagine it's going to be a nuke that makes me get a game over. I still have not found out what it does, but I'm like, whatever that countdown is, I don't want to know.
I assume it just kills you, basically.
Yeah, I would assume too. I might have to look up footage or something. But no, the fight was great. I already mentioned how like sick it was though, like when they referenced the final moment of Final Fantasy VII with the Omni Slash and everything. But oh my god, it's just really fucking cool. But yeah, when they showed off Zack and everything, I was like, this is insane. Like, where is this going? He's supposed to die here. What do you mean he's alive? Like, oh my goodness. It's just nuts. Like, they just completely throw out the script, and now it's just this feeling of uncertainty, right? Like, just when you played the original game and you just don't know what's going on or what's going to happen from here. And in a way, it's exciting, right? Like, my thoughts, you already know from like the streams you go to, but it's a little bit gray for me, right? Like, on one hand, we're getting something completely new and out there. Like, now nobody knows what's going to happen. Now you cannot use the original game as a blueprint for what's about to happen. But at the same time, it is a little sad for new people. Like, I think to my sister as well, where she didn't play the original game, but now she got so attached to these characters, but she's not going to experience the original story. You know, like, I know it's safe, and I know it'd be considered boring for some people, but for others, it's been over 20 years, you know? There's definitely a point where games do benefit from just having a straight up, not remaster, I guess, but like, you know, like a remake or something that, like, because they're already expanded in from the original game in a lot of great ways. It would have been great to just see that expansion with the original story, but I understand why they chose what they did. It's just that I can't help but feel that there was definitely a trade-off, right? For some people, it won't matter, but for others, it would have been nice to experience the original game in a new way, in a way that they could appreciate by like modern standards. So I'm a little mixed. I'm personally excited because I know the original, but you know, it's like having your cake and eating it too. Like, which one would you want? You know, it's just, it leaves me a little mixed. The only thing I will say too is that, it has the potential to suck. You know, it like all bets are off. But the thing is, I can't be too cynical because of what I just played. The remake was fantastic, and I know we'll get to like final verdicts afterwards, but it gives me confidence that they'll do a good job when they've done the character banter and the world and the charms so well. It gives me more confidence than I normally would have. If they just did this complete swerve from the get-go, it wouldn't give me much confidence, I'll be real. But after having played this, it gives me hope that they'll do a great job on the next one. Not guaranteed, but I'm more optimistic than I thought I would be, considering what I just played, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But yeah.
So yeah, we'll go into our theories and speculation and I guess interpretation of the ending and specific scenes here in a minute. But before we do that, I want to quickly just give my own opinion on the ending. So Shin, I believe, is pretty excited about where the story is going. Marcus too, but a little bit more mixed. And I'm probably, I guess, the most negative on it among the three of us.
We got the whole spectrum. Yeah, sorry.
No, this is fine.
I love this.
I gotta be honest, after beating the game originally, I mean, first of all, the presentation and everything is of course amazing, right? I have no issues with that. I mean, I have a nitpick with it, but for the most part, I think the presentation of the ending and everything was amazing and the final fights. But narratively speaking, I'm not a fan of where it's going. And initially, I actually kind of hated it. I've come around somewhat since then, but I'm still more leaning towards disliking it than liking it. And I have two reasons for that mainly. The first reason is that I would have just preferred a more faithful retelling of the original story, personally. Yeah. I'm not necessarily a purist. Like, I'm fine with most of the changes that they made, like the little additions, the embellishments, right? But I think at chapter 18, it just goes a bit too far, in my opinion. I want to draw a quick comparison. Bear with me, please. To World of Warcraft, at the risk of boring you to death.
Oh, it's fine. It's just that, I will not be able to add anything to it, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I kind of want to make my point with that, which is that, so World of Warcraft came out in late 2004, right? And since then there have been a lot of add-ons, and the game has evolved so much to the point where the modern iteration of World of Warcraft is now an entirely different game. To the point where some people love one and hate the other. They're so completely different.
Yeah.
But for many years, because the game has evolved, that meant that the original vanilla World of Warcraft didn't exist anymore. And so a lot of people wanted a World of Warcraft classic version, which we then got at the end of August last year. So World of Warcraft Blizzard realized there was a market for that, and they made that remake. But in the years leading up to that, there was a lot of discussion among the fans and also with the developer about what kind of changes people would like to see to vanilla WoW, and also if there should be any changes. And there were a lot of people who wanted to see changes. Some people wanted to see class rebalancing, other people would want to see additional endgame content, other people wanted cheaper mounts and stuff like that. But so a lot of people wanted changes, but there was no particular change that a majority of people could agree upon, right? And so in the end, the community just kind of agreed that the best course of action was to literally not change anything. Because while doing that might not guarantee the dream version of World of Warcraft to anyone, it would at least give everyone a game they would be happy with, or at least satisfied with, And now we have a similar situation with Final Fantasy VII Remake, except we're kind of on the flip side of that, where we kind of have major changes being introduced here. And I wonder why, because I feel like even people like Maximilian Dude, who is super stoked and much more excited about Final Fantasy now that there is the possibility for major changes, I feel like he still would have been fine if the game had stuck with the original story. He still probably would have been fine with it. And I think the group of people who was potentially in the market for Final Fantasy VII Remake, but only if there were going to be major changes to the story, I think that group of people is extremely small, at least compared to the group that we now have that is really bummed out about the ending and the fact that they're doing something different. So it's kind of a situation where Square Enix is really just shrinking their own target audience for these upcoming parts, and causing a lot of disappointment. But I feel like I personally would have just preferred if they had stuck with the original story a bit more, and I think it's a bit of a wasted opportunity to bring people together and to unify everyone in their excitement with the upcoming games. And the second reason why I'm kind of disappointed with the ending is that, I should say, even though I would have loved if they had stayed with the original story, I'm still fine with them changing it theoretically, but I just don't trust that they're going to be able to improve on the original story. And this is where I kind of want to harken back what you said earlier, Marcus, the current Square Enix kind of issue.
Yeah.
Because they're introducing timelines and potentially even time travel, who knows, story elements. And we had a lot of that in Final Fantasy 13-2 and in 13-3 Lightning Returns. And it didn't work out great in those games.
If I could just interject as well, I think a lot of fans will agree with me, or disagree. But listen, time travel is also a thing in Kingdom Hearts 3D, and that is one of the worst choices they ever did in the entire series when it was already convoluted. Yes, I am in the trenches of the bullshit, and I still love that series, but oh my god, they did not need to complicate it even further by adding in a time travel layer to that shit. Yeah, it's so easy to mess up. Even if it's just the one thing you add, time travel is one of those things where people like to play fast and loose with it. And if you think about it for even more than a second, it probably isn't going to make sense for the most part. But yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to pin this on any particular writer because they've done great stuff, they've done less than great stuff, but it's just the subject matter itself is very risky, and I don't think Square has done it well up until this point. So yeah, I would have preferred if they had stuck with the original, and while I'm theoretically okay with changes, I'm not convinced that they can add, maybe they can add something of value, but to overall improve the story of the original, I'm kind of pessimistic about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hopeful that Square can prove me wrong with where it's going.
Yeah, no, and that's
going to theories and speculation here now.
Yeah,
pretty
I
much.
just wanted to say that I do totally see where you're coming from, and that's the one thing that I gotta stress for anybody listening to this. There is no right opinion, right? I think the people who expected a remake, and that's what they marketed it as, are fair in wanting that, right? I think that's a totally fair thing to want and looked forward to, right? Like I remember, I think even today I was looking up some of the soundtrack and just listening to some of the old ones to compare it, and a lot of people were saying like, "Oh man, I can't wait till they get to this part in the remake," right? Like some people were genuinely excited to see some of these locations just completely rebuilt from the ground up and seem like a whole new perspective. Because that was like half the fun of it. Like the Train Graveyard being a fantastic example where that shit was like weirdly hard to traverse in the original. And seeing it in the remake, like it was like really cool to just see how they handled that, along with some other locations, like Wall Market. I still can't find my way around it, but in a kind of good way. Yeah. There's so much to it to like explore. And that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people were just looking forward to it being remade and just seeing it from a whole new perspective, seeing it fleshed out. Because I don't think they're all purists. I think some people just wanted the same story, but with like new stuff. Now, granted, for older fans, there won't be that thrill, but it's just, it definitely is a trade-off. Like I said, you're definitely missing out on something for doing this, but to each their own. I just think that both opinions are valid. You can be excited for this, but you can also be disappointed that you didn't get what you were expecting. And I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say, but I think I lost it. Yeah, no, it's gone. I hate when that happens. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, the question is how big the changes are going to be, which at this point we don't know. Could be minor stuff, could be pretty major stuff, but we don't know.
Mind if I go into some theories then, by the way?
Yeah,
no, you're not allowed.
Let's start off the next part of the.
You can't speculate. It's like.
Let's kick off the next part of our discussion,
Shin. A lot in my mind here. Jeez,
oh yeah.
I'm trying to think right now.
I have questions written down, by the way.
But yeah, pretty much. There was a lot of things during that ending. Execution-wise, it could have been better. One of my friends told me that they could have used the live stream instead of just going into the Destiny realm instead to talk about this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But, execution-wise, it wasn't the greatest, but they did what they could or what they had. I don't know. But, you know how Sephiroth told Cloud you have 7 seconds to change Destiny and all that? And you know how that kind of ties into Aerith's death in the original?
Yeah, I heard theories about that.
Yeah. That really is, I felt like it was really towards Aerith's death. So basically, Aerith could still live. Potentially.
Apparently people timed it, and it's pretty much 7 seconds the amount of time it takes for Sephiroth to fall down all this distance and impale Aerith.
Yep.
So, but I also heard another theory that the 7 seconds refers to the impact of the meteor and a decision Cloud will have to make there. Could be both, I don't know, honestly.
Could be, but it feels more like Aerith to me than the meteor, honestly.
That would be more personal to Cloud, yeah.
But that was surprising to hear. But it's pretty weird how the whispers are in the original game. Well, in the remake, where it's just basically, the purists in themselves too. You could think of it that way. That they are the purists that want the original game. In a way, that's kind of true.
It's kind of meta in that way, yeah.
That was kind of funny when I saw that.
I wonder if that's intentional, that connection by the developers or not.
Maybe that'd be good to have a developer diary, though.
Oh
honestly,
yeah, definitely for
about
this one.
That. Yeah.
Especially after the whole series is done, the whole thought process would be so interesting.
Pretty much, but there's one thing too where it's like how Zack's death, for Cloud. Like, the reason Cloud still goes through what he goes through is because of Zack. So I'm wondering how they'll handle Zack if they actually make him alive for the next parts. That kind of defeats the purpose of Cloud's intentions, from what I remember.
That's true, but I think what the game is trying to tell us is that Zack is alive in a different timeline now.
Pretty much. But it's like Zack was still dead when the remake still. But when they went through that dimension, they changed the timelines, of course. So we have a different version of Zack. But that Zack, when Cloud got his sword, was still dead.
Exactly, yeah. So he's alive in one timeline and dead in another.
Yep.
And I wonder if we're gonna explore both timelines to some degree. Have you played Witcher 3, Shin?
No, sadly.
But maybe you know that you play through the game as Geralt for the most part, but then there are certain sections where you play Ciri, this female character, to explain her side of the story. And I wonder if maybe they're gonna do it like that with Cloud and Zack.
Yeah.
Or it could be that Zack is just DLC stuff. I don't know.
I don't know how they'll handle that. I look forward to it, but I don't know how they'll handle Zack, per se.
Yeah.
And Maximilian Dude was like, they could make the ending so that Cloud and Zack together could just, defeat Sephiroth and all that, but I don't know about that yet. I'm like, huh. But, trying to organize my thoughts because there's a lot there. Holy crap.
There is a lot, yeah.
The way the developers are seeing it, at least by theory or speculation, it seems like they're going for a good ending to Final Fantasy VII compared to the original. So the original was the bad ending.
Yeah, I guess what was bad about it was that Sephiroth wasn't defeated entirely because Advent Children happened. That's the one thing I can imagine. That they want to kill off Sephiroth for good this time.
And the way, how in that memory between Sephiroth and Cloud, kind of like, and Maximilian kind of mentioned it too, Sephiroth it seems like he wants to manipulate his own destiny.
Yep.
And
literally, the ghosts were there to make sure, he would meet his demise in some way or another. But he still kind of lives. In the Advent Children, he says he will not live to be just a memory either.
Yeah.
That's one key line that I was like, oh wow. He'll
Yeah,
still live.
I can't believe that was actually relevant several years later.
I was
Oh,
like,
my Lord.
wow, that was powerful what he said there.
God. And it's insane too, because oh my God, like it's just so wild because it makes sense for him needing Cloud to make this happen, because
Yeah.
this is after Advent Children, where Sephiroth isn't even really a thing anymore. He's now pretty much what Geostigma is in that movie. Like he's basically this like entity that can kind of like manipulate stuff in certain ways depending on like who was in contact. That's why like in the remake sometimes those like reunion dudes or whatever, you know, they're called, with the numbers and everything, that's why like he shows up whenever Cloud comes into contact with them, because they were basically like failed experiments in the original game. So it makes sense that he needs Cloud. He needs someone else to pretty much pull the strings and get him to that point, because he can't do it on his own. But holy shit, it's insane. I remember in articles before the remake came out, Nomura or somebody said that, oh yeah, we're trying to rope in the compilation into remake in some way, and I'm like, okay, how are they going to handle this? Are they going to release them on the PS4 as a collection or something? It's like, no, that's clearly not what they meant.
Yeah, Crisis Core probably not ever going to get ported to anything.
Please don't stay far away from Dirge servers, please, I'm begging you.
Yeah.
I already have to deal with the fact that there's S and G type soldiers. Genesis is already confirmed. It is a stone's throw away. I don't want it.
But I'll add in a bit more theory here. You know how Aerith is always like realizes everything around her?
Yeah.
You know, in the original, she was somewhat the same. She just knew her death was coming.
Yep.
But somehow she's still about the same. It's like she already knew about the events from the original already. She just transferred from the original to the remake. I was like, what is with her?
It's weird because I speculate. Sorry to cut you off. I speculate that she's not from a different timeline like Sephiroth. I think it is just the planet giving her visions.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know, I think she is still the present one from that timeline. Because I remember a line where she says that you're wrong. Everything about you is wrong, implying that she doesn't know him like that, but she just knows that this is bullshit. You know, like him being here should not be a thing.
This is not the Sephiroth the planet warned her of, or something like that.
Pretty much. So it's like Aerith already knows about her death already, thanks to the planet, but now things are changing.
Yeah.
And Sephiroth wants to change the way Destiny is working through here. He doesn't want everything to be the way it is. And he wants to be the god, the one to manipulate everything.
Yep.
And he just goes against the way the planet wants, you know, everything to go by.
Sephiroth says, fuck your script. I don't care.
Pretty much.
But yeah.
Let's go back to Zack for a minute. It's actually interesting. The force that you see in the end of this, or at the end of this game, is actually not technically the force that takes out Zack at the end. He actually manages to beat all those soldiers, but then he's really beat up and exhausted himself, and then there is one more group of enemies coming in, and they finish him off.
Yep.
And one theory right now is that, because I was confused, why do we see the whispers in the past when they should only change the future going forward, right? But one theory is that Zack was always at the end of Crisis Core about to defy Destiny by surviving, but it was always the Whispers who sent those additional troops to finish him off.
Yep.
And because Cloud now took out Cloud and the party took out the Whispers, they can't do that anymore, which is why we see the Whispers disappearing in the past.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's why Zack survives, which is pretty interesting. And pretty OP, by the way, by Zack to almost always defy Destiny.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
Hey, Cloud, you see that? Oh, no, I'm thinking Persona 3 flashbacks. Hold on.
Oh, my God.
Sorry, I'm not even going to mention that. Go ahead.
But no, yeah, that definitely checks out. It's slightly ambiguous, but it would be weird to have that swerve and have him die anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that checks out, honestly. It would make the most sense. I do wonder if we are going to, like, you know, transition to playing as him at some point, whether it be DLC or in the second part in some way. Man, what the heck is Cloud gonna do in that timeline? Is he gonna like settle and like not even be part of the party? Because if he is, what weapon would he use now that he doesn't have the Buster Sword?
Yeah, that's a good
I think
question.
about that sometimes. But yeah, oh man,
He just uses the nail bat.
God.
I'd like to add that, with everything that's going on, and I know we have many demographics and many controversial thoughts about this, about this ending.
Mhm.
But, we do have the original scenario writer. We do have the original, director of the game being a producer, I believe. And we have a lot of the original staff from the Final Fantasy VII, including Nomura, who was also part of the original staff on this.
Yeah.
But it's like, if they're pulling this stunt off, they probably have something really good up their sleeves if they're gonna pull this off. If they, think about it,
They at least think they do.
at least they think they do.
Yeah.
But it's like, they got something really good up their sleeves that they want to pull this off. And they're really confident about it.
Yeah, and I think that's what gives me slight confidence too. Sorry to interrupt. Is just that, like you said, the original staff is there. Granted, ideas will change over time, and who knows if they still have like the same ideas that they would have had in the original. But just seeing how they handle the characters so well in this, and seeing how like they understand a lot of the world now. It's not like they're just rebuilding it and not respecting what the original game was, because that was what the remake was. They respected a lot of what the original game was in the first place.
They really respected it.
So this is the thing. You can have reservations about where this is going to go, and understandably have, a bit of doubt or uncertainty. But I think that feeling is intentional by them, right? Because now everybody, whether you're an old fan or a new one, now you both don't know what's going to happen. But at the same time, it's a matter of just, we'll have to see what happens. But I don't think it's going to be, a spit in the face of older fans like people, are saying. Yes, it took a swerve, but these are people who already in just one game show that they are meticulous in bringing stuff back from the original. I don't think it's going to be an insulting thing that's just going to shatter everything you knew and liked. But it's gonna go somewhere. I don't know where, but I think they're still gonna try to make older fans happy in some way. I don't think it's gonna be a complete train wreck to older fans.
Yeah.
I hope not.
But that's the thing. I feel like they're just gonna keep the same venues and areas and stuff that you experience beyond Midgar, honestly.
Yeah.
But they're gonna twist the flavor a little bit, here and there. You're still gonna experience the same events, as I feel like.
Yeah, or maybe you'll go to the same places, but it'll be for a different objective. A different main objective or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I want my snowboarding minigame in there too.
Yeah,
they have to do Golden Saucer, period. I don't care what timeline shit they do, they gotta do Golden Saucer.
Yeah, of course they have to. And I want my invisible wrestler to appear. Alright? They better.
God. Better be able to do basketball, please.
Oh, heck
and
yes.
we gotta have that date in the gondola. Yeah.
Oh god. 100%ing the chocobos though. Oh.
Yo, what's that marching minigame in Calm?
Oh god, don't know. Actually, no. I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid of that one big ass minigame that felt like some kind of military simulator. It was a military
strategy game, yeah.
Yeah, where you had to put units all over the place.
Was that like Fort Condor?
Yeah.
Fort Condor, yeah.
Oh,
and I was like, what is this? That's the one thing that I remember a lot in terms of mini games. If they include that somehow, I'm like, oh my god.
They probably are going to. Hopefully improve it.
Hopefully they improve it, because I'm like, it's kind of fun.
When's Cloud gonna do CPR?
Oh gosh. I'm gonna wait till Cloud goes into a wheelchair now. Or not.
Oh my god.
I don't know.
Dude, wait, oh my god, I gotta talk about that too. That's actually one of the parts that I actually was really excited to see when they do the remake, is like that trippy ass subconscious shit was like the weirdest thing that I was not expecting.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to see that they alluded to that near the beginning. Gosh, where was it? I think it was like chapter 7 or 8, like before he meets like Aerith. He has that segment where like he's basically talking to himself. I watched that cutscene again with the context I don't have the ending. Holy shit, there are so many times where they allude to that stuff, and it's not even like, oh my god, like I want to play the game again, the remake rather, just to see how many times they hint at what they're gonna set up for the ending. Because what the other Cloud tells him is that, oh, you made it out of this with a couple of scraped knees last time, and you know, Cloud's just like, wait, last time? What do you mean? And like, you know, he gets cut off, but it's just like, it's implying that, you know, maybe that Cloud talks to him is like, you know, also knowing like future events and knows what happens as well. Like this shit is crazy. Like, oh my lord, there's so many things that I want to just go back and see with the context that I know. Because holy shit, they got some hints in there. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's pretty nuts. And actually, you know, there's more nut stuff, and I've got a bunch of questions written down. So, you know, about theories and interpretations that we can go through if you want to. It's like 5 or 6 more questions.
Go ahead.
So first of all, how do you think Sephiroth got his knowledge of the future that he seems to have?
Hmm.
Do you think it's just due to him? Is it a future Sephiroth, or?
I feel like it is just that. I feel like it's the same Sephiroth from Advent Children after he lost the fight and realized that, okay, well, now that he won here, I need to find a way to make sure I don't lose, right? So I think in some way, maybe it's like due to like being part of the live stream. Maybe it's just a thing he can do. I don't know. Maybe, I'm sure the sequel will explain a little better. But I'd imagine it was the same one who found another timeline to try to prevent this stuff from happening. So I think that's how he knows, basically.
Okay. And let's assume that it is a Sephiroth who came back from the future. Do you think we now have 2 Sephiroth in this timeline? The original one still trying to do his original thing, and another Sephiroth trying to manipulate events, including the other Sephiroth?
I wonder. I feel like, I feel like the answer would be yes, but at the same time, it's kind of like the original, where the Sephiroth that happens in the current timeline anyway can't really do anything. He's kind of like, it was mainly like revealed to be Genova, of course, that was like doing all the stuff that like the party was seeing in the original game. So it's like, I guess it could be 2 Sephiroths, but the way I see it is that in a way, this Sephiroth could be the replacement for what Genova was doing in the original game. And now that Genova's basically done for, at least as far as we know from the remake, like fighting her so early, maybe this Sephiroth takes the place of that. Maybe he's the one that's now manipulating him to get him to the other Sephiroth in like the Northern Crater to give him like, you know, the Black Materia and shit. Who knows if it's gonna follow that plot? But I feel like maybe it could be like a replacement thing where now he's doing the events that Genova was doing in the original game and basically fucking with the party. But there probably is 2, yeah, I'd imagine.
So you think Genova is already done for? Because weren't there a couple of Genova fights in the original?
Oh, it was more
my
than
memory's
just a couple.
hazy.
There's more than a couple.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's just I wonder how this is going, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we actually fought and defeated Genova herself, but rather just some manifestation of her, like a small part of her DNA or something that was blown up in this hallucination or something.
Yeah, now we're gonna be like, hey, we're just part of a whole hallucination from Genova herself anyway. Throughout the whole thing.
That'd be insane.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, I wonder. I feel like they'd have to address the whole, like, if there is 2 Sephiroths deal. But even then, I doubt it get in the way too much of the narrative, considering one can't do shit. But yeah, I wonder. They definitely have to. They would have to address that. Holy shit! I'm thinking of like a really horrendous fight where like the Sephiroth from the future and like Genova like team up for this like insane close to final boss fight. Oh my lord.
I also heard another idea about how Sephiroth got this knowledge, which basically says he knows because he was in the live stream for all this time between Crisis Core and now. But then I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, but then that would mean that he had that knowledge in the original as well. And so why didn't he take advantage of that knowledge in the original? So that, I don't know if it checks out for me. So yeah, I'm unsure how Sephiroth has this knowledge. I guess
It's more,
he's just time traveling, yeah.
Time traveling, yeah, because he just knows about it because the original happened. And then now we're in the remake where now he realizes everything, so now he's going to change things for himself.
I guess so, yeah.
Uh,
Okay, that's the next question. Do you think Biggs is alive in our timeline or in Zack's timeline?
You talk about Biggs, you said?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd say Zack's time. Well, the way Zack's timeline in a way. Kind of like they changed fate themselves, so now they're in a different timeline alive, you know? Compared to the original. That's the way I thought. Yeah.
Because, like, here's my question. Is it confirmed? Because I was trying to figure this out, but, like, I was not sure. Have people confirmed that the bandana or the headbands and the gloves that are on the table are Jesse's? Is that 100% clear?
From what
I'm not
I've seen,
sure,
it is.
100%.
It kind of is hers, but it could be somebody else's.
Because the way I say it, I'm like... I looked at those and thought, like, is she dead, or is he keeping those as a memento of her passing? You know, like how some people do. They keep the material possessions as something to remember them. So I'm thinking maybe only Biggs is the one that lived in the first place, but I'm also thinking I want to say Zack's timeline, but it could definitely be FF7R's timeline as well, because Jesse is still dead, presumably, if what I think, you know, could be the case. So it would
Unless
still
she
make sense
died
for
in the other
remake.
timeline too, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess I was thinking of Remake's timeline, because after they just changed Destiny, things completely changed in that timeline.
Yeah.
So,
Or it's like Zigoten said, unless like
Yeah.
Jesse also dies in Zack's timeline some way.
yeah.
But I want to say Remake's timeline.
But this is pretty much speculation. Where are they going to go with this
It's
anyway?
insane, yeah.
This is our questions. We want our questions to be answered, man.
Oh, man.
But yeah, that I completely don't know.
Mhm.
Like, this is just speculation, of course. This is
Yeah.
for the devs to answer for us.
Okay, another question I have is, what do you think? Because we defeated the big manifestation of the Whispers, but we know that some Whispers are still around because we still see them in the Sephiroth fight.
Yeah,
And
he
it-
absorbed some of them into a sword.
Yeah, it kind of looks like he's controlling them or something.
Yeah.
So do you think they're gonna have any major role to play still, the Whispers, or are they just gonna be part of Sephiroth's arsenal now?
Hmm.
I think part of Sephiroth's arsenal, honestly, because he
Yeah.
definitely did absorb all of them into him.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
So
it's
it's like,
definitely gonna
yeah.
be Arsenal, in
Yeah.
more ways than one. I feel like now that means that they're not going to interfere as much as they were, like getting in his way in the remake. So I feel like it's gonna be Arsenal, but I also feel like it's gonna be a way where they'll interfere, but in his favor, under his command, right? I'm not
Yeah.
sure how, but it will definitely be under his control. They will not try to make things right anymore, because I feel like him absorbing them is kind of like a sign of like submitting to him, right? Like he's
Yeah.
now in control of all of this shit.
Yeah.
So who's to say? You know, because it's like that's just how I say it. It's like now he's like now you know I own you pretty much.
When you think about it, though, Aerith's death can actually still happen, though. Because he's
Oh, yeah.
Could, yeah.
controlling everything. And it can actually get even more dark than
Yeah.
the original when I think about it. If he's taking control of all that, I'm like, oh boy, I can see so many death flags
God.
still, but we'll see.
So,
I'm excited still, but yeah.
so where do you lean more towards? Is Aerith still gonna die, or is she gonna survive, or could we possibly have a situation where we gotta make the decision who to save between Aerith and Tifa? What do you guys think?
Yeah, the 7 seconds, the way Sephiroth said that to Cloud, I feel like that's Cloud's decision almost alone at the time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Cloud's going to be changing that. So I don't know how they will do it. But that 7 seconds line is definitely a big one. And there's going to be changes in some way or another with that line.
I'm really torn on it because obviously, as we all know, her death is a huge deal for people who play the original game. So not having it would diminish the impact, but at the same time, a lot of fans already know that. So it's good to have the uncertainty there again. Now it's not guaranteed, but man, it's like, would it really phase?
Yeah, you know what I think?
I feel like the death could still happen. It's just that it might be completely unexpected now. Like, now I don't think it's going to be at the altar, because now clearly nothing's going the way the original game did. So I feel like it's going to happen, but it's going to have the shock value again, if that makes sense. Because I feel like they're already, if they're already not doing Zack's death, like, they got to have at least one, right? And I don't mean Jesse, because that's not even 100% confirmed. But man, that one made me cry though. But yeah, it's I feel like they have to have it. You know, I don't know. Maybe they don't.
I feel like
for
they
me,
could have
the
a
impact
choice.
is so big.
Like, you have a choice now.
Maybe they make you
whether
really
to
work
save
for
her
it.
or not. Yeah. Like, you have to go through quite a bit of steps to really figure out how to save her. But
man,
I don't know. They could do something, but we'll see.
I think we've got everything covered. One more question, but we've kind of addressed this already. How big do you think the changes are going to be? I think the safest assumption is that the general story will be the same, but details will change.
Yeah, I think the overall like main goal or threat might be changed in some way. But I feel like it's going to have to take place still in the original world of Final Fantasy VII, right? Because even though someone's altering shit in the timeline, it is still the same locations and place, right? Just because you're time traveling doesn't mean that locations will change as well, right? It doesn't make sense. So I feel like it's gonna bring back a lot of stuff that people like, but it cannot be a complete remake anymore. And I think that's why, you know, they divert from it. And like that's probably why a lot of people were wondering, like, why is it not called Remake Part 1 or Part 2, right? And that's probably why, like, that was the remake of the original game, you know?
Lots of people are saying Part 2 is going to be Rebirth, Part 3 is going to be Reunion, potentially.
Yeah.
That would check out, I guess. If there's going to be a Part 3, I'm not sure.
Yo, the real question, though, is that big-ass snake going to be there the first thing I set out to do?
It better be, honestly. It has to.
Oh my god.
I love that thing.
The little things I'm looking for. God.
Pretty much. I do love the fact that the freaking car, like, we're going out of topic a little bit for VII Remake, but I do love the fact that when you open the car, like during the motorcycle sequence in Shinra, like right when you escape, they actually open on the opposite side still.
Yep. It's so
Sorry,
good.
I just was liking that detail. They kept it the same.
Nice.
Anyway, continue.
So do we have anything else to add about the spoiler discussion before we jump to the final verdict? Anything that comes to mind?
I can't really think of anything else. Oh, I guess, I don't know if you guys mentioned it, but I did notice on Max's stream where he speculates, and I actually kind of believe it, where at first when he fought those, like, specters, or, like, the three of them that seemed like they were fighting with, like, their guns, fists, and sword, I immediately thought it was, like, Barrett, Tifa, and Cloud, in, like, a future timeline, like they said in the SS. But, Max and a few other people speculate that it's actually the Advent Children, like the three guys that worked, you know, to bring Sephiroth back, because one of them doesn't fight with just like both of their fists. One of them only has like almost like a gauntlet or something like in one of their hands, which reminds me of like one of the fights, like ironically, where he actually had to fight against Tifa, and he only had like that one weapon on his arm that would like stun and shit. Same thing with the other one with like two guns, and one of them only one-handing a sword. So people are speculating that that's those three instead from the future timeline, and not what I immediately thought was Cloud, Tifa, and Bear, which is interesting. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that in the future.
Could be.
But holy shit, I did not see that the first time until like Max pointed out on his stream, which is insane how much they're alluding to that movie.
That could be possible, yeah. The way the characters are lined up a couple of times throughout that fight, like Cloud is facing the guy with the sword, Barret the one with the gun, and so on.
Yeah.
And you're kind of immediately drawn to the conclusion that, maybe they're fighting themselves from the future, but might not even be the case.
I just remember the last part too. The crazy part that makes it all fit together is that in the movie as well, when they're all pretty much taken down, they summon Bahamut, which is the same like fusion shit that they do in that fight.
That's true, yeah.
Christ, like there's so like, oh my god, people are finding this stuff. It's
mind-boggling stuff.
God. But yeah, that's it for real.
It's probably my favorite scene. I'm not a fan of Advent Children, but the way Cloud finishes off Bahamut is pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Lord.
But yeah, I guess that's it for the spoiler discussion. So welcome everybody who skipped the spoiler discussion. We've discussed a lot of things, but we want to end things here with our final verdict about the game as a whole. How would we review the game? I don't know if we're going to give it ratings or just generally summarize our final thoughts. To each their own, I guess. Let's start off with Shin. What is your final verdict of the game?
In terms of a rating, at least for myself, it would be a 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
But critically, I'd say at least around a 9 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I can never see it going down below a 9, honestly.
Because of the nitpicks that you mentioned,
yeah, the nitpicks. Yeah, the nitpicks that we had, I was like, it's a good game. Just not everything was completely perfect, so I just give it a 9 out of 10 critically.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, 10 out of 10. Huh?
Man,
yeah,
I can't believe you stole my score, man. How dare you? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, that's pretty much what I said on stream, right? Like, if I had to look at it from, noticing all the flaws, it's probably a 9. Maybe even like if we're doing 0.5, it's like an 8.5 or something. If it detracts too much for some people, it has some slow moments. Like I think like the sewer is a bit too long for what it is. I think like chapter 6, I want to say, was one that I wasn't a huge fan of, like leading up to sector 5. There are just some parts where it's just like it's not as exciting. Even with it being a slow moment, like sometimes it does drag. However, like I mentioned before, none of that stuff was enough for it to stop being enjoyable for me. Like for me, it's a 10 out of 10 personally, just because I've never played a game in like probably the last like decade that gives me like the emotions that I have playing this game, like the amount of smiles and enjoyment and charm. Like I could think of a few games like like Xenoblade or like the Nier series or Yoko Taro games, but I love those games for different reasons. But this is like completely different like type of satisfaction for me that I was not expecting to get from this remake. It exceeded all my personal expectations, and in some ways gave me stuff that I didn't know I would want or be down for, but I just went with it anyway. Like chapter 9, like that entire dancing I never saw coming. A lot of the inclusions that they added I would have never seen coming, but I was super down for it. For the most part, when they did them, I was just like, this is great. Even just like little side stuff, like even like I forgot to mention too, like Leslie or like some of the new characters added in, and like Johnny having like more of a unfortunate role. It's just like a lot of this cool shit that I'm just like, man, I'm so down for this. It's all so charming. The lows, they are there, but when it gets to those points, like the highest of moments for me, I'm just like, I can't stop loving this game. I never want it to end. One of the first things when I finished the game or started playing the game was like, is it really okay for me to keep playing more? Because I just couldn't believe that there was so much more to play. It's just it's made me so happy that I can never take away. It's one of my favorite games that I've played. Definitely, I don't know, from the Final Fantasy games that I've played, I dare say it's probably my favorite Final Fantasy, which is insane to say. I feel like I should wait on that, but if I wait on that, I'm just going to play another Final Fantasy game, and that'll change anyway. But from what I've played so far, it's like, yeah, I love it more than 15. I've had more fun with it than 4 and like some of the other ones that I've played. It's just, it's making me so happy that it's a 10 out of 10 for me. That's all I want from games, is just to have that feeling of just complete and utter enjoyment, and it gave me that in so many ways. I love it.
Yeah, I agree with most things. It's pretty interesting because for the most part, I was just entirely loving the game, right? It got as close to being a perfect game as you possibly can get. Most of why I'm bummed out about the game is just what I would have expected, and also what I fear is going to happen in the future. But just this game by itself, I guess I would rate the game like a 9.5 overall, to be honest.
Yeah.
Definitely the strongest modern Final Fantasy game. Probably the best one since at least 12, maybe the best one since 10 for me. And 10 is like my favorite game of all time.
I love 12 too.
Yeah, 12 was very good. And this is... I don't know, it's really strong. It's definitely better than 15 in my opinion. Even though I had fun with 15, but this blows it out of the water in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything to add, guys? Or...
Good game.
Good game, yeah. Everyone go play it
game.
if you haven't.
Please buy it, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely say, like, if you could play the original game before you play this, I think you might get more out of it. But I think it's still a good entry point. It's just that, you might have to do some homework later to make sense of that, the final moments. But I think you'll be fine. I think it's still relatively great for newcomers. Like I said, I was tagging along with my sister. She was watching me play it, and she was confused at a few points where I had to explain, a bit of backstory. But overall, she enjoyed the characters, fell in love with the world, the music, everything. There's a lot to love here. I would recommend this to any JRPG fan or anybody that wants to get into Final Fantasy, and found that the other modern ones were a bit too hard to get into. Maybe you just didn't like the writing or the introductions or the parties. It depends. There might be a few reasons why you couldn't get into modern Final Fantasy stuff, or Square Enix in general. But this is one where it's I'm telling you, the charm is so grounded, it's so great. You will love this cast. I think it's hard for someone to dislike the banter and writing in this. It's so grounded in reality and so charming. There are times, not major spoilers, but I remember Cloud just did this one line where he, as he was about to go into the next phase of boss fight, he just says, "Bring it on, bitch!" And I'm just that's exactly what I would say. And I'm this is too real. This filled with so many other things. The banter is just great. So it's definitely a good recommendation for newcomers trying to figure out what made this series so good, or what made this game so good,
Definitely. Yeah, I guess that means we're kind of at the end of our discussion, but before we finish the podcast, why don't you guys give the audience a reminder of where they can find you if they want to hang out and talk more about video games?
Shin, you go first.
Yeah, you can just meet me at twitch.tv/Shinuchi. You just find me there, doing variety of games and mod center. But yeah.
Cool. And you guys can find me Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, all the same thing. VFXMario. No different, username or spelling or anything on that. I primarily stream on Twitch. I don't have any set schedule or anything, but my preferred genres are JRPGs and fighting games. I do branch out and play some other stuff, like I mentioned earlier. I played Doom Eternal, love that game, but that's primarily my two favorite genres. You'll see me playing often, but just pretty much doing that at the moment. I know, I guess whenever this comes out, Trials of Mana is coming out soon on Friday. I'm looking forward to that, so I'm probably gonna be streaming that on the channel. But after that, just who knows what's gonna happen. But those are current plans. But that's pretty much it.
Nice, great. Yeah, I'm also looking forward to Trials of Mana. I hope I can get it on day one, but we'll see how it's gonna work out with the current
shipping
situation.
Delays, fun times.
Yep. But yeah, I guess that this does it for the podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you also had a great time with the game, or are going to have a great time with the game if you're gonna play it. And again, I highly encourage you to check out other Final Fantasy games as well if this is your first one and you liked it. Fantastic games, most of them anyway, with some fantastic music and all that good stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching everybody, and have a good one. See ya.
Later.
Haters.